Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just regular folks talking about model railroading. I am your host, Andy Dorsch, and joining me this evening is my co-host, Mike Ostertag. Mike, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'm good too.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Hey, it's gonna be a fun week.
Your hat.
Yeah, it's I got a hat of our railroad here, the Mascoutin Valley. I went ahead and I did the merch dive, but this is going to be a fun week of model railroading. We got Train Fest in Milwaukee this weekend.
Yeah.
Before we get all to that fun and fanfare, our guest this evening on the show is Mike Confalone. Mike, welcome to the Second Section podcast. How you doing this evening?
Good evening, Andy and Mike. I'm doing great. You guys doing well?
I'm full. I just got done eating like about a half hour ago, and I just feel like a lead weight.
Well, no taking naps during the show, Mike. There's going to be a
there will be no napping. There will be no napping on this one.
So how do you guys feel about the Monday Night Football game last night? Was it a good thing that Aaron Rodgers lost, or a good thing that the Packers won?
Yes. I like Aaron Rodgers, honestly. Regardless of all the pomp and circumstance, everybody that goes, the way I look at it is everybody that goes and has gotten crazy about who he is now and all this sort of stuff seems to forget about the 18 years and how he really helped put Green Bay or keep Green Bay on the map. And, we've had three quarterbacks in the last, what is it, Andy? 30 years, 20 some years, whatever it is, while other teams in our division have had a combined like 45 or something like that. Yeah. So it's, you know what?
It is what it is, right?
Yeah. And
I'll tell you something though. I'm going to throw a couple of names at you guys. I'm a retro guy. I'm a big football fan.
Oh, you're a football fan. Here we go.
I'm going to throw a couple of names at you Packer guys and see what you think about these guys. Two guys that I really thought were cool quarterbacks. Don Majkowski. And Lynn Dickey.
Lynn Dickey. Let me tell you about Lynn Dickey.
Yeah.
Lynn Dickey
was a bruiser.
Had Lynn Dickey not broken his leg against the Los Angeles Rams back in 81?
Right, it could have
been something right around in there.
Yeah,
he would have been in line for MVP that year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they had a really good offense, but their defense was a sieve. I mean, it was just
a great offense.
They had an amazing offense that year, but they just had no defense.
Who was the running back? Was it Eddie Lee Ivory?
Was it him or was it Gary Ellerson?
I think it was both of them. I'm throwing names here. I'm going to get these guys all fired up.
Eddie Lee Ivory was an amazing player.
He was.
Do you remember?
I'm glad you recognize these names. But
how about the tight end? Who was the tight end?
It wasn't Coffey, was it?
Paul Kaufman, yeah.
Yeah, Kaufman.
Paul Kaufman. Yeah, look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember, of course, James Lofton.
Lofton, yep.
John Jefferson.
John Jefferson before he went to, or was it after the Chargers?
He came to Green Bay after the Chargers.
From San Diego.
Yeah.
I remember, what I do at night sometimes, if I'm not reading or my wife and I are watching something, I'll go to YouTube. I'll put in an old Monday Night Football game from the I like the 70s and very early 80s. I was a huge Eagles fan growing up as a kid.
Okay.
So Ron Jaworski, Wilbert Montgomery, Harold Carmichael, the Dick Vermeil years.
Yeah.
So a couple of months ago, I watched, it was a Packers Monday night game. I forget who they were playing. I should know. It was the Redskins. It was a Redskins-Packers game from around, I'm going to say 79, 80, but this was like 41-38, the score at the end of the game. It was Lynn Dickey and Theismann. It was just like back and forth, constant offense all night long. But the NFL to me was different back then. Just a different game. It was not so predictable. It was rough and tumble, not so fast. I liked it a lot more than it is today. So I like.
You didn't have all the rules.
Yeah, it was just different, you know, just a different thing. A lot of teams played outside, they played on grass. A lot of you know, I just had there's a certain character that's missing, I think, today.
I mean the run game was pretty prevalent, right? And it was, you know, there was always a fullback, you know, and there was
Yeah,
yeah.
they ran the ball a lot, and
Yeah.
the quarterback wasn't in the shotgun all the time. He dropped back. There was a lot
Right.
of little nuances that are missing now. So, but I just thought I'd name drop those couple guys and see see if you leave.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
Mikowski, if Mikowski hadn't gotten hurt, maybe Favre wouldn't have had his opportunity when he did. You know, I remember that. You know, when he got hurt there, and Favre came in and lit it up. But Mikowski was a good quarterback too. At least
Yeah, he was.
I was at the game against the Cincinnati Bengals in the end zone on the opposite corner with my buddy. Him and I got in because we got cheap tickets and we got end zone tickets when Kittrick Taylor caught the game-winning touchdown to get from Favre.
Really?
Yeah.
No
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
I was,
wow.
You know, and that was amazing. That was awesome.
Let's talk about football all night.
Yeah, I could do this all night long.
The pre-show, we were talking about some other stuff. Nothing about model trains. There was nothing about model trains.
There was just there's a Netflix. I don't know, not to you know, disparage Favre or anything, but there's a Netflix documentary about him.
Oh yeah,
not so
good. No, not great.
At least they didn't portray him so well. You know, so how these things are, but yeah, that was like, wow, that's interesting. But anyway,
there
you go.
So Mike Confalone is a avid football fan, as are we. I mean,
I was, yeah. I really can't say I am anymore. I just nope.
I'm a season ticket holder.
Yeah,
I mean, there's something, like I said, I'm really fussy about stuff. Yeah, that's what Rose calls me, Mr. Fussy. I'm just fussy about everything. I turned on a game last night. I immediately start. We watched it with my son and my wife were watching it, and I immediately start. I'm like, what the hell are they wearing? What kind of uniforms are these throwbacks? Throwbacks. I'm like, but they're ugly. And I'm like, what's with the all white Packer thing? Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's this year. They've done that.
That's like the Lions. I saw the highlights. The Lions are wearing black. I said the Detroit Lions don't have black in their uniform colors going back to when they were a great team. They're Honolulu blue and silver. I don't want to see any black. So that just pisses me right off. I'm like, enough. I'm done with this. Anyway, I'm sorry to be negative.
No.
That's fine.
It's all good. It's all good. So Mike, we're on the football topic, but we're also going to be on the model railroad topic.
Yes,
so you have a pretty I guess awesome, at least what I would call an awesome model railroad, and you've been working on it for a few years now.
Yep.
And I guess for the folks in our audience that aren't really familiar with your model railroad, I guess, exploits in history, could you give us like the Reader's Digest version of, okay, we're all the way up to what we would call the Allagash? So like, how did you kind of get started in it? And then, and I think the two things that I wanted to tease out of here was, all right, how do we get started? And then why the freelance bug?
Okay, yeah, sure. I started model railroading probably at age, I was interested in trains as a little kid. I think my grandmother brought me down to the tracks once, and I saw Long Island, New York. Saw a train and was bitten by the bug, and so it was really an interest in real trains that started it. So I think the first train set, which was Christmas of 1977. So I was 11 years old at the time, and it was a 4x8 thing, and my friends across the street had trains, so it was kind of around me. And then met up with a good friend of mine, Joe Posick, in junior high school, who was also into trains, and we kind of got together, joined the Model Railroad Club on Long Island, sort of nurtured that hobby. My parents nurtured it. So it's kind of an interest in the prototype and the model railroading at the same time, if you will. One fed off the other, I guess. But when I went to college, and I met my wife, prior to college, we've been together since senior year of high school. So at that time, the model railroading kind of went on the back burner during college, and I got a lot more into rail fanning, and did so in college. Made a lot of trips to Vermont, from the University of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Did a lot of a good amount of rail fanning around that time, as much as I could. And then really, it was the rail fanning dominated. Um, when we finished college, I moved up to New Hampshire. I knew about all the railroads up here because I followed them as a kid, and started to get out and really get trackside. I mean, I spent a lot of years doing that. I was out every week, just about every weekend. And we did, not just grade crossing stuff. We were hiking in and, getting a shot. It was like a high adrenaline hunting. I mean, seriously,
Really?
that's what it was. This was not just casual rail. This was, I got to get that shot. I got to walk in 3 miles. I got to climb a bluff out in the wilds of wherever by myself without a cell phone. If I die, I die. Who cares? That's the attitude. And it was just like, do whatever you got to do to get the shot. And got a lot of great stuff and discovered Kodachrome and shot slides and all that stuff. And then in my son was born in 2000, started a magazine called Railroad Explorer. I don't know if you're familiar with that. We did that for 17 years.
Yeah.
Published a bunch of books alongside that. So around 2005, while I was doing the magazine, I started to I had a life change. This is where it kind of all starts, really. Our son has a disability. He's a special needs kid of 25 now. Has a rare genetic disorder. So the first years of his life were rough. And it's been a very challenging 25 years. Let's just say that. He's doing fine now. But I had to I left my position. I worked for Ford Credit as an analyst, credit analyst. I had to leave that job to take care of him because my wife and I were both working full time, both commuting. He was 3 years old, going to be going into kindergarten, and we had no plan in place, and he needed a lot of attention. I mean, a lot of therapy. So we made the decision. I said, can't do this. So I quit. I left. Became a stay-home dad, which was just after 15 years there at Ford. So my life then changed from going to a full-time job every day, commuting, to being home, taking him to school, picking him up. We were doing occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy 4 days a week after school. So it was a lot. So it was a transition from full-time work to full-time work, but a different kind.
Right.
Tough stuff. But it helped him a lot, and not to we could have a 4-hour conversation about Tom, my son Tom. But anyway, so at that time, I started to get into modeling a little more. Kind of revisit it. I hadn't really done anything with it since I would say, the late 80s, so this would have been around 2005 or so, 2004, 2005. I started to fiddle around with it a little bit more. I'm not exactly sure why I started to get back into it. I can't say if there was a specific event that made me start to sort of dip my toe in the water a little bit, but I did. Probably because I had some time. I started weathering cars, and I said, I'm pretty good at this. I can. And I started selling some cars on eBay, and I started to just kind of formulate some ideas. I had a small bench set up, and I just kind of messed around a little bit. So this was around 2005. Then a friend of mine and I took a drive out to Dick Elwell's in Adams, Massachusetts. Oh. So anyway,
that'll do it.
Yeah, that's all. That was it. That was the event that catapulted me into this whole thing. Really, simply put, on the way back, we just were like in stunned silence. Like what did we just witness here? I had never seen a railroad like this, and I was a member of a club as a kid, a big club. There was nothing like this. This was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So incredible railroad, and it just made me think, what? I got, and what the thing about that railroad was Dick had some photo backdrops. He had a few, not a lot, but he had a few photo backdrops there. And I said to myself, that more than anything made an impression on me. I said, you know what? I can do something here with, I can get on this. I can do something here. Because I had been doing publishing for a long time with the magazine and the books. I was in Photoshop all the time. I knew I was a good photographer. I had a really good eye for color, extremely, kind of focused on that. And I said, I think there's a way to do something with this here. So that kind of led me to build a shelf layout, which was the original Woodsville Terminal freelance. And I'll get back. I'll answer your question about the freelance aspect of things.
Sure.
But I went up to Vermont, took a bunch of photos, and at that time it was before digital. Really, it was a big thing. So they were chromes. They were Kodachromes. Got them scanned and made photo backdrops, and created that first shelf layout. And that started the whole thing, because up to that point, no one was really using photo backdrops, other than Dick Elwell, as far as I know. There were a few on his layout, but I kind of took it from there. I said, I'm going to run with this thing. And I think it's sort of blossomed into, it's kind of like, well, photo backdrops is where it's all at. Because up until that point, the sort of philosophy was to make the backdrop as, sort of make it so it doesn't intrude on the foreground scenery. Make it kind of blend into the back. Don't make it so good. Make it kind of crap. Whatever. Paint it. Do what you can. Completely wrong. That sort of philosophy doesn't make sense to me. So I think the photo backdrop has become sort of the part of the scene, a very important part of the scene. So that was the first sort of serious model. I had a railroad. Now that I think about it, I had at our previous house. I had a small layout there in the late '90s. But it just, again, it was more fiddling around. There wasn't anything serious, anything focused. It was just testing the waters, trying some things out, but it never really amounted to much of anything. So the freelance thing comes from, so that first Woodsville Terminal shelf layout, that comes from the railroads that influenced me growing up in the magazines. And primarily it was Tony Custer's Allegheny Midland and Alan McClone's Virginian and Ohio. Really those two. There were others as well. The Sunset Valley, I remember that one making an impression on me when I was much younger. My mom used to go to the library and bring home issues of Model Railroader for me. I didn't have a subscription, but she'd get them. The library had them. You can get the back issues, right?
Yeah.
They always had the current. She'd bring them home, 5 or 6 of them, and I would just there's a picture of me somewhere I have in my collection. I'm like 10 years old, sitting in a chair reading a 1977 issue of Model Railroad, But I just was good for whatever reason, like that Sunset Valley and the A&M. I am always been a very creative person and sort of a dreamer, if you will. I just was drawn to that. The idea of strict prototype modeling to me it doesn't interest me. I'm not saying it's good, bad, worse, the better. It's just, it doesn't interest me because there's a certain something about freelancing that really captures the imagination. Really captures the imagination. And that I need that, number one. Number two, because I'm so fussy about stuff, I find it extremely difficult. Because I was going to do a prototype scenario. I was going to model the Canadian Pacific and B&M and the Lamoille Valley in the Vermont setting. And I said, I can't make this right. There's no way. I look at a picture in a book, I can get close, but I'm not going to nail it. It's virtually impossible to replicate a prototype scene. It's just really difficult. There's always something that's not quite to scale. The background's not right, whatever it is. There's just something that, if you're really familiar with a scene, I'm saying, if you're intimately familiar with that scene, you say, I'm going to replicate that. There's only a couple of people that can really do that. Neil Schofield on his CP layout he's gotten as close as you can.
He's got a beautiful layout.
Very close. In some instances, it's dead nuts on. But there's no one else that can do that. Nobody, as far as I'm concerned. So freelancing enables you to, number one, get close to the overall look of an area get the feel. You feel like you're in Maine when you go downstairs here. It looks right. It looks like people who live there say that it looks like that.
Yeah.
So that's good. But you're not bound to these strict guidelines, or these strict sort of this building's got to be this big, or it's got to be in proportion to this. Yeah,
I think Neil's in the audience tonight.
Yeah, he's lurking. He knows he's good. So
got a very good layout.
If he did a proto freelance layout, it would be oh my god. So, but he does. Neil's a prototype modeler, and that's great. And in a way, I am too. It's not like I just get. Everything I do is based on the prototype. When I make these decisions about the freelance railroad, I look to the prototype for every detail. I have to. It's almost ridiculous. It's almost ridiculous the amount of vetting I go through. It keeps me up at night sometimes because I have all this backstory, and that's part of what I do. Like everything I do on the model railroad has a backstory. There's no just I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. No,
but that's so important.
Yeah, it has to be a backstory, and it gets to the point where it's almost in the weeds. It's almost a little bit too much. But that's just the way.
I love the backstory.
Thank you.
I think the backstory of any freelance railroad is almost, if not more important than the railroad itself.
Yeah,
I would agree. Yeah, because you have to make it plausible.
That's the word.
Plausible, right? You have to say, okay. And in this case, this model, when I did the Allagash, when I came up with that, I knew when I was going to do that, and I don't want to get ahead of things, but that's basically the freelance, the nexus of the freelance bug that I have. So that's where we go with it. That's where it started. But when I created the Allagash, lots of things to look to: the Bangor and Aroostook, the Maine Central, other New England railroads in that time. And so it's hard to go too far, of course, but you have to try and create something that's not exactly the same as them, which is not easy to do. So I think I did that in 2009 when I started that, and I'll let you guys ask some more questions. I'm going off on a tangent.
No, this is exactly where we want to go.
This is exactly what we want to have happen.
Yeah.
So when I decided to do something. When the Woodsville terminal thing ran its course, because it just wasn't, it wasn't big enough. I wanted something with a little more balls, something that was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I said, all right, let's do something bigger. And the state of Maine at the time, I had done a lot of rail fanning in the state of Maine in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, a lot of time up there. When the Bangor and Aroostook was it was under new ownership and was kind of finding its roots again, and there was a lot of action up there. It was cool. So I spent time there and got to know the territory, and I liked it a lot. It had industry. Historically, Maine has the paper industry. Vermont, New Hampshire, they had not much industry. A lot of scenery, long on miles, beautiful scenes, but not much industry. So Maine had that at the time when the Maine Central was, at its peak, say in the late 70s, early 80s, pre-Guilford. The Maine Central, I think, served like almost 20 active paper mills. Number one paper producing state in the country. I think Wisconsin may have been second at that time. So to create the Allagash in a 1977 to 1980 scenario, you're talking, paper industry and everything that goes with it, first and second generation diesels, all great stuff. So it was easy pickings, and came up with some imagery, some of the logos and the color scheme, and just kind of put together a brand, if you would. And that was the biggest thing, is to come together and put together a cool brand. And I think I did that. That went pretty well. That kind of, it just seemed like it smelled right, and it passed the sniff test. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I did that for a bunch of years, and I vacillated on the era. Specifically, it was 1977 to 1980. Did that a little bit and a lot of the motive power decisions, like what locomotives to use, were driven by the sound. What sounds were available. Sound was in its infancy at that time. It was just coming out. And once Matt Herman was at Loke Sound and did the things he did, my God, he did some incredible stuff. Their catalog is over the top. I mean, and
ESU.
Just nuts. Yeah. Well, ESU. I mean, and that's all Matt Herman. I mean, he did all that incredible stuff. And he's coming out, we used to talk a lot, and he'd be working on sound files and sending me samples, and because I'm as fussy about sound as I am about all this other stuff. Very, very particular. I know the difference between a Alco, a 16 251 and a 12 and a 6, and the various, variations within. I know what a different exhaust sounds like, and what a governor, a GE governor, how it responds on an Alco C420 versus a Woodward governor. I know all this stuff. I'm not a mechanic, but I know these things that drive the different sound attributes. So a lot of the motive power decisions I was making were based on what sounds are available, or what's coming out. Oh, look at this new sound. Let's try them. I got to get some RS-32s now. I got to do this. I got to do that. So there was a lot of changing and thrashing around in the early days of the Allagash, but it kind of settled on a reasonable motive power fleet, and did that for a while, and then started to get the itch, the itch for what's next. So I decided to forward date to 1984. And with that comes the inevitable question of what becomes of the Allagash, It either stays independent like the Bangor and Aroostook did, or it becomes part of the evil empire, Guilford.
Ooh, yeah.
And I chose the latter.
Oh, no.
I chose the latter.
Yeah.
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Mike. When I saw that happening, I'm sitting there going, what is this guy doing?
I know.
I was sitting there going, holy, someone had to pay him to do this. That's because I was actually going to send out like a whole bunch of people to check on you, do welfare check, because it was one of those things where there's nobody in their right mind would actually start doing that.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I remember the late great Jacko Zanich, who models the Atlantic Great Eastern. I'm sure you're familiar.
Oh yeah, that was a beautiful layout.
Yeah, him and I. He modeled. He was a primary influence when I got serious about all this, because of the scenery, and his time of year, the season he modeled. So he called me once, and he introduced himself, and I had known about the layout of his railroad. I told him, I said, hey, you're the reason I'm modeling the early spring. I said, because you're the only guy who's doing this thing. I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to run with it, take it to another level, whatever. I'm going to do my own thing with it. But he's the reason. So we had this thing where we interchanged. Okay, he has Allagash. He had a live Allagash interchange on his railroad, and I had Atlantic Great Eastern Power here. So he would interchange with the AGR, and I'd interchange with the AGE here. Even though he was modeling 1964 or 1959, both eras, and I was in the early 80s or late 70s. We would both model it on each end. But when he found out that I was going to go to Guilford, he was pissed. He called me up, and he was out of his mind. He's like, because he was, I don't know if you know him, he was a character. I mean, he was by the rules, by the book. He was a railroader. He worked for the Grand Trunk for forever. And, he was like, no, you can't do this. What they did to those men up there. And I said to him, listen, this is a model. This is a model railroad. You got to do, it took time we had to discuss it and talk it out a little bit. But I said, the opportunities, and this goes for rail fanning as well. The early Guilford era was incredible for rail fanning, because these were all over the place, and so all of a sudden I could model U-18Bs and, GP40-2s and D&H Alcos, and have them coming in from Mechanicville, New York into Madrid, and all this interplay, and the whole operation had to be redesigned, retooled. So that was a challenge, not just, I feel like having some engines. It was a complete and utter reinvention of the operation. So that to me was a good challenge to do.
So when you went and decided to do that, Mike, did you just say, okay, here's my Allagash stuff. Okay, now I've got all this new Guilford stuff that I need to start building and create. So did you just how did the Allagash power get handled through the transition into Guilford? I guess that's the best way to say it. I'm a railroader myself, so I mean 33 years. So I mean I've seen these transitions as to I mean I was on a Grand Trunk Jeep 9 today.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So I mean, I was on a Grand. I mean, it was, and I was in heaven. I'm telling you, I was just like, I was loving it. And but the way these railroads and the prototype actually handle these transitions, you know, your Allagash power is so iconic. Honestly, it's just so iconic. How did you handle the transition into the Guilford era of the Allagash with the power that you had already created?
Yeah, so essentially I had to determine how would Guilford have handled things. I had to essentially commingle the Allagash power with whatever the other component roads had, the Maine Central, the B&M, and the D&H. Determine what would be where, when, and how. What locomotives would stay, what locomotives might go. But essentially, it was just kind of combining them. So you would have a run through from Mechanicville, which is the B&M and D&H interchange. I'd have D&H power run through. It used to run through to Portland, Maine, as a rule. But because of the AGR's affiliation now, that power would simply run. The run through then went all the way to Madrid. So simply, so you'd see D&H C420s and U23Bs and 40 Jeep 39s and whatever else they had running through to Madrid, sitting at the Madrid terminal, teamed up with whatever local Alcos, maybe the D&H Alcos and the Allagash Alcos would commingle and run together. The Jeep 7s and 9s of the AGR would be, assigned to whatever would be typical for that power during the Guilford era. So the decisions were made based on what I saw and what would be likely. So it was just basically an integration into the existing system, into the existing pool. And that's really it. So it wasn't all that difficult. It wasn't because you had to think of it as a full integration of the AGR. The AGR was essentially going away. In the color scheme, the paint, the whole imagery, all that stuff was just going to be part of Guilford. I didn't advance the calendar to where things got bad. And I told Jack, I was annexed, I said, Jack, I'm not going, we're in the early days here because things got really bad after you get into 1986 and 87, the strikes, all the bad stuff.
No.
Oh, yeah.
In 1984 was probably the last, maybe a little bit into 85, were the last, when I say good years of Guilford, where it was sort of, quote, normal. More normal, where there wasn't the radical changes going on. The Mountain Division of the Maine Central, of course, was silenced in late '83, so that was a major. But that would have gone anyway. You can cry and moan about that. That thing was a torturous mountain grade. They didn't need it. Send the traffic up to Mattawamkeag to exchange with the CP and just change the dynamic and the routing, and that's the end of that. So it's sad that it went, but it had to go. But the rest of the operation was not all that different. You had different, visually it was different because you had locomotives all over the place, but operationally it wasn't so bad. It wasn't until things started to get nasty in the mid 80s and later that things really went to heck, So I stayed in that 1984 pocket where, I dared not venture out of that. So that was it. So I stayed there for quite a while. It was I don't know how many. Well, it was that up until a few years ago, I decided that I'd had I don't know how many years we did in Guilford. It was quite a while. I got a little tired of the rolling circus, circus colors and all these different things mixed together. you can call it a rolling circus or a rolling junkyard, depending on
That's an
your point of
interesting.
view.
It's an interesting term.
Yeah, well, I remember Jim Boyd at Railfan and Railroad. I was doing an article. I used to do articles for Boyd back in the '90s, and a few times. He used to talk on the phone quite a bit. And I proposed doing an article on the Winchester and Western down in Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
And Alcos, I had chased them a few times. I was like the land that time forgot. It was nuts. It was incredible. But anyway, he said, Winchester and Western, don't they look like a rolling junkyard? Because the locomotives were at the time were all patched out. They had some stuff from the central Vermont. It looked terrible. It just didn't have the pretty look that it did years ago, where it was black and gold and looked sharp. And that rolling junkyard was that term stuck with me. I kind of like that.
No, that's a good term.
So I went after the Guilford thing a few years ago. I went backdated to 1982, so it would have been pre-Guilford, just before the change, where everything was Allagash and finished out the AGR. And I had no intention of getting rid of the AGR at that time. I was enjoying that. We had a lot of good operating sessions, and then last December I blew it up. I threw a grenade at it, and blew it up.
That is putting it mildly, honestly. I mean, I do have one more question here, Andy.
By all means, please.
So during this whole veritable cavalcade of ideas that you had with this time frame, how does the Oxford County come into existence?
Yeah, it's a good question. And they're dead now, by the way, but I'll get to that.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So I can patch out the boxcar I just bought?
Yeah.
Hey, hold on to that. It's going to be worth something.
I was going to say, now it's a rare item.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
A lot of fallen flags. So the Oxford County, during the Allagash, I forget what specifically when I started that, but the White Mountain branch, which is quite a bit of the railroad if you look at the track plan. It's a good chunk of it. I wanted, because of competing interests, the AGR was sort of a bigger railroad. I wanted that short line sort of feel, and so I created this short line called the Oxford County, which would have been cast off by the AGR in the late 70s, say 1977, to operate over Hillendale, bad track, bad grades, steep grades, some paper mills at the end of the branch, but nothing that at the time not worth keeping. Cast it off like Maine Central had with any number of branches, and this could be repeated nationwide. So the Oxford County was created, and there's sort of a hand-me-down, hand-to-mouth sort of short line that struggled through the years, and it gave me the ability to have both, right? Yeah. But what ends up happening is, and this is very recent, only a month ago. I don't know. I can't keep track. I need a scorecard. I decided. I said, all right. Well, I've done this Oxford County thing for a while now. What's always the problem has always been that because the Oxford County is a big chunk of real estate. It's not too small. It's not small enough to say I'm not taking much away from the AGR, but how do I explain this? I felt like all along throughout its existence, it was a good chunk of real estate to give to a short line, and the AGR is giving it up. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
The AGR was always the primary railroad. So it was this constant conflict of, should I have that short line? Shouldn't I? Blah, 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 on and on, back and forth, yada, yada, yada. So what I've done is this most recent change. When I threw the grenade at the AGR, it sort of opened up okay, what do we do now? Okay, because now things are blown up. I just blew up the whole damn thing. Now I got to figure it all out again. So with the 1991, we can get back, we can talk about why I did the blow up, but the Oxford County effective 91, so effective say 89, 90 is out of business. They just gave it up. Bad management, changes in management, any number of things, poor track conditions, declining business, say what you want about it. Eventually, they gave up the ghost, and the AWM was appointed as the interim operator, and that's where we're at this point in 1991. So the AWM actually operates all of the railroad now, the entire former White Mountain branch, which they call the Rumford branch. So the Androscoggin and Western Maine runs that entire railroad now. So there's no more short line. There's no more short line. Just one railroad that handles everything. So the Oxford County trackage, it's still has the same character, but it's operated by the AWM. So you'll have AWM engines based up there at the engine terminal to switch to local industries, and a road job will go up and interchange with them. So there'll be interaction still, but it's one railroad now.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
So I'm gonna bring up some pictures here, Mike, that kind of take us through and kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So let's see if this works. This is the production quality that we get here with the second section podcast here. So if we're looking at this left to right, so we had the Allagash all the way up until 84.
I'll take that though. Yep.
And then and then Guilford takes over, and then we have and then Oxford County. Yep. And then now then there's the Grenade, as you call it.
Yeah.
And now we're on to the Androscoggin and Western Maine railways. So I guess so this is the, and we said 2 new railroads, but since we've started the idea for this show, things have changed again, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But
the graphics department couldn't make the change in time.
Yeah, we don't pay the interns enough, Mike. I've told you this.
I understand that.
So
I know
that Rumford Northern down in the lower right would be a future thing, which is legit. But it's just that I've decided to settle into 91, and I can tell you why. And I really do feel like, I'm sure there are a certain number of friends of mine who are rolling their eyes right now when I say that I feel pretty settled right now. I really do. So, but let's talk. Go ahead. You asked your questions about the Grenade and how it came to be, or whatever you want to do. And I want to thank Dean Potter, by the way, if he's listening, for coming up with the A&WM logo there. I just absolutely love it. The logo there. So.
I love that shield.
That's cool. Shields are pretty cool.
We're gonna get it onto a boxcar pretty soon. So.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So then, and let's just back up just a little bit to talk about the Oxford County and how it ate up some real estate on your layout here. So this is the track plan, and this is the layout itself. So it's 24 by 58.
That's right. Yeah.
And right now it's pretty substantial. Is it single deck, double deck?
All single. Yeah. The only double is, we have a staging in 2 places
down here.
Yeah. In the garage there. Yeah.
Okay. And then so where does the Oxford County come into play?
So the Oxford County ran from White Mountain Junction, and I can't really see the track plan. You could find White Mountain Junction.
Yep, I got it.
Yeah, right there. So that was the interchange between the Allagash and later the AWM and the Oxford County.
Okay.
And the Oxford County then would follow where you're going through Andover, and then East Andover. That's the old White Mountain branch. East Andover through Old Wall and up Farmers Hill and up towards North Rumford. So it's, as you could see, and that would be the end of track for the Oxford County. And then from there, from their engine terminal, there were 2 branches that went out, which are not modeled. They're modeled in staging only, traffic only, to two distinct paper mills, one at Newry, Maine, and one at Rumford Point. So as you can see, it takes up a fair amount of real estate.
It's a pretty substantial short
as
line.
it relates to the whole model railroad. And that was part of the sort of boy, I'm taking a lot away from the AGR, and that was a bit of a struggle to determine,
Wow,
whether to have it or not. So.
that's a lot. So let's so I rudely interrupted your flow here, Mike. So so to carry on, so we're in this in between time now.
Yeah.
So you've settled on what year now for your Androscoggin and Western Maine Railway?
It's going to be, it's 1991. So say the early
19,
spring, so March, April of 1991. Yeah.
okay. And there's a picture that we're gonna have here come up next, I believe, which is gonna show essentially the essence of the railroad here. And let's talk
Mhm.
about this a little bit and maybe some of the decisions with the
Yep.
power behind it.
Right. So the whole, it's worth talking about the nexus of the crisis here as a
Okay.
quote from a song, a favorite song of mine. But like, what the heck happened to cause this? Because there are a lot of people that just like were like, "What the heck?" Oh, this is terrible. And I said, my, my
I
my,
messaged Mike the minute I saw it on Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, my
yeah,
world's ending.
yeah, I appreciate the people that really enjoy the layout, the railroad, And my reply is I'm glad I didn't. There are some people that take the sawzall to the thing and cut it down, take it down. I'm fortunate because I was able to rebrand it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people can't do that. They get the bug. It's like they want to do something completely different, and they have no choice but to take it down. And I would never. I'm telling you right now, and you could mark me on this. The railroad is they'll bury it with me. I am not going to dismantle this railroad. So don't worry about that because I go downstairs and I love it. I look around and I marvel at it. Honestly, I'm like, how the hell did I build this damn thing? Because some of the stuff was the work of a bit of a madman, to be honest with you. Some of these scenes, like, I remember building them, but I'm like, yeah, that was when I was crazier than I am now. I'm a lot more mellow now. But I go down, I don't get frustrated and say, oh, I really don't like that scene or I don't like this. No, it's not that. The thing that drives me is what's going to run in that scenery. I'm enamored with the scenery, the time, the place, the geography, the scenery, the stuff I've done, the things I'm going to do. There's lots of things left to do to detail and all that. Plenty to do. But what happened was I started to, again, I mentioned earlier about sound files and locomotive sounds and prime mover sounds and things and rail fanning and all that kind of a bit of that's very visceral, right? It's visceral.
Mhm.
If you've rail fanned
Yeah.
or been a railroader like Mike, it's visceral. Railroading is a visceral thing. It's not just toy trains going around a loop. If you're rail fanning, if you're out trackside and 5 below 0, I've been out in 42 below 0, and I'm not talking about wind chill. I've been out in 42 below 0. Thank you.
Done it.
Oh my
With a
gosh.
camera and looking
Yep.
at an RS-11, and the fuel is congealing, and they got to bring in kerosene so the thing doesn't die. This is the kinds of stuff I did, and I took note of the smells and all that stuff. So it's very visceral. The sound of locomotives at work on a hill on a grade, and particularly Alcos, right? I grew up with them on the Long Island Railroad with
Yeah.
the C420s. So at the very end of the Allagash, I started to introduce six-motor Alcos, the 630s, the C630s, former Reading engines that would have been from the Conrail pool to handle some coal traffic. So these would have been, from the Conrail's deadline, basically. At the time, Loke Sound had done something with that particular sound file, the 16-cylinder 251. I heard it. I think they redid it, remixed it, whatever they did. It was just like killer. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was so good. So I got a couple of six motor engines, and I equipped them and ran that for a little while. So the AGR, and it was on the cover of RMC. The Allagash feature had those locomotives on the cover.
Yeah.
So from there, I started to say, okay, I'm really digging this. I like big Alcos, love to run them. But this is limited. I can't just, redo the roster. The AGR roster is what it is in 1982. It consists of Jeeps and small 4-axle units for the most part. And I can't just say, well, that never existed and blah, blah, blah. So I immediately, this didn't happen over the course of weeks or months of contemplation. That's not the way I work. It's just like one night I said, I'm done with this. I'm done. I've run this horse for 16 years and I'm all done with it. I don't want to do this anymore. It's run its course. I want to do something new and exciting that would be a struggling, I guess you'd call it a rescue operation. Railtex or some other holding company comes in and picks up the pieces and creates something out of a difficult situation. And that right there, based on the timeline, begs the question, okay, well, what are the details? What's the company? Well, in my case, the black and gold paint scheme in my head was there very vividly because there was a railroad called the Cape Breton in central Nova Scotia.
Yep.
Which was a Railtex operation in the early 90s. They operated some former CN stuff in Cape Breton Island in Canada. We went up there twice, 1994 and 95. And I'll just tell you right now, it was just blew my mind. Railtex at the time I think this was their flagship operation, but they got these CN C630Ms. So they were equivalent of a C630, but the Montreal equivalent. And that's what they ran, a fleet of them with some RS-18s. But you'd go up there and they had nasty grades and they hauled coal and all kinds of papers. I mean, it was like the craziest experience I'd ever had rail fanning. And they painted these things black, these big 6-motor units that were, on their last legs. They were beat tired. And they painted in black and gold, like this nickel plate sort of inspired scheme. And they were filthy. But there was something about it like that. And we went up at that time of year in the early spring before the green came out. So it was both times we went. It was March and April. And I thought back to that and I looked at the slides that we had. I'm like, holy crap, this is nuts. I said, all of a sudden I started getting this vision of my railroad with that power. And that's really all it was. It was just a simple visual sort of thing of those locomotives running on my railroad with that sound. And I said, I'm done. I said, my goose is cooked. This railroad, the AGR is done. I can't do this anymore. And it literally was overnight. Overnight, I got up the next day. I said to my wife, we were laying in bed, and I said, I think I'm gonna. I forget exactly what I said, but I think I'm all done with the railroad. I said something like that, and she's like, "What?" She was like, "What? What are you? Whoa, what? What are you talking about?" I said, "No. I'm not done with the physical railroad." I said, "I'm done with the Allagash." She's like, "Oh, thank God." She thought I was gonna take a sawzall to it and chop it down, whatever. So that it was literally overnight. I decided it that night, and that was it. There was no contemplating it over the course of several days, saying, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should, blah, blah, blah. No, it was done. The decision was made. And it really was based on that whole again, get back to Mike, what you talked about, how important the backstory is. So there was drama there because when you have a startup operator, look at the Arkansas and Missouri Railroad, Alco, what they did with picking up the pieces and creating this robust thing with these secondhand pure Alco, fleet, and there are other examples out there too. But this particular one, the Cape Breton thing. So I took the Railtex thing, which was the parent company, and basically created a predecessor to the Cape Breton in central Nova Scotia, which would have come into being prior to the CB and CNS. So those colors were there in an experimental fashion, perhaps with the Androscoggin and Western Maine. And the name was, I created the name based on the geography, the Androscoggin River Valley, the Androscoggin River itself, and Western Maine. So it actually, and with this whole thing, I had to sort of redefine what this railroad was in terms of what happened, how did this, what came to be, what happened to the Guilford thing. Well, the bottom line is just like the Delaware and Hudson, the D&H, they threw them into bankruptcy. The Allagash got chewed up and spit out. The strikes of the mid '80s forced a lot of business away. They lost a lot of business in Maine. The paper traffic, a lot of it never came back. So the same kind of thing happened to the AGR. And because of the profile of the railroad being so difficult, it's a mountain railroad where the others really weren't, the B&M and the D&H and the Maine Central. The AGR had big mills, two of the biggest mills in New England at Dixfield and East Dixfield, but it's down at the bottom of a mountain. So they had decisions to make. In my backstory, the north end of the railroad, the Allagash subdivision north of Jackman, which is the CP connection, was embargoed. The strikes caused such problems at the mill up at Allagash, which is a major traffic source, that they lost the majority of that business. And that business went to the Bangor and Aroostook. So with that business essentially gone, the north end of the railroad gets cut off. And now this, Railtex comes in and said, Guilford puts it up for sale, and there's a suitor. Railtex comes in and gobbles it up and says, we're going to try and make a go with this to rebuild the business and work with this difficult profile. And that's the backstory. And then the locomotives, essentially, the Allagash was, familiar with Alcos, and they obviously recruited some of the mechanical people to foster this relationship with this fleet they were going to cobble together. But the precedent was there because they did it with the Cape Breton operation. They did it, they could have bought Jeeps or whatever the heck, They bought these beaten Alcos to run up there because the guys were familiar with them and they were able to get a few years out of them. So that was and this picture sort of illustrates that. In my world, among the first power that they would have acquired would have been these C628s from the Chicago Northwestern, which I learned about. And I'm sure you guys have seen the great documentary video on them. How they ran them right up to the very end of 1986 in ore service, and they sat, I think, in Green Bay for like 3 years waiting for someone.
Oh yeah, and they were up in Escanaba and Green Bay. They were both places.
Yeah, amazing that they didn't go to the torch. They sat there waiting for. I thought there was a potential operation that might have started up. It didn't. So I'm saying to myself, well, I could scoop these up. Why not? They would have been available and well cared for. Right? They're not junk. They had some life left in them, obviously. So I scooped up a couple, as you can see here, and I've got one more to add. And then, the big centuries that they would, so essentially Railtex would have picked from the Guilford roster what the Alcos that Guilford was getting rid of Alcos like crazy at that time, 1987, which would have been the AWM startup. If you look at pictures, they were just sidelining Alcos in droves and Binghamton, New York. Everything was being deadline, scrapped, sent offline. They were, sticking with going with EMD and some GEs still. So that time frame, that 87, early 88 time frame, is just perfect for a startup for so many reasons. For the motive power, for the Guilford, the likelihood that the AGR would have been just chewed up and spit out. Everything was coming together, and it just created a really exciting sort of scenario. And I just said, yeah, let's do it. And that's where we're at now.
So essentially, you're modeling a division of Railtex and not technically an independent railroad.
Correct. Yeah. And
that is interesting. That is very interesting, because Railtex is not somebody that you actually hear about very often in model railroad or even in regular railroading.
Yeah, well, they became part of Rail America, right? And then part of I guess it's G&W now, Genesee, Wyoming.
Yeah.
So back then, Railtex Railtex. So the other railroad that Railtex made big. It was a big thing. Was here in New England and Vermont was the CV, the Central Vermont.
Oh,
when
Yep.
when CN got rid of the CV, that was Railtex in 1995.
wow.
So and that was the thing about Railtex was they painted locomotives. They came in with an image. They didn't just run ragtag stuff. When they started the Cape Breton, everything was painted. You go up to Cape Breton, everything was black and gold. Even though they were beaten Alcos, they painted everything. In Vermont with the CV, they had remanufactured Jeep 38s, ex-GM&O units arrive on the property in full blue and gold paint with lettering and then logos and everything. So they presented an image, a positive image to the public, because in the case of the CV, it was a very controversial thing. The state of Vermont and their senator up there, Mr. Sanders, were making all kinds of noise about the CN dumping this railroad. They came in and they had a real struggle there getting the public on their side. So they had to. I guess the point I'm making is they didn't run a bunch of leased junk. That they presented a positive image. So for me, it enabled me to do to come up with a paint scheme that to fly the flag. And that's what I did. So yes, Mike, it is a Railtech subsidiary. Really, that's what it is. And so using that as the basis for the visual sort of thing. One of the things I'm deciding not to do that was maybe going against what Railtex did was on the freight car side. Railtex really didn't have fleets of freight cars. Like they didn't. They used whatever cars were available from the connecting roads. In my case, because of the paper traffic, the paper mills need a supply of cars. So I've decided to kind of go, a little bit against that and actually come up with, a freight car fleet, and not a big one, but I'm gonna paint some freight cars, that have that logo on there, that shield. I've already started re-stenciling some of the AGR stuff, and so we'll do some of that, but not, you're not going to see big fleet of cars. There'll be some though.
Would Railtex have contracted with someone like ITEL for their freight car fleet?
I don't know about that. They did it on their other lines. They didn't have. I looked into this initially and asked some people in the know about this, and really they didn't do that. But they didn't. They didn't own freight cars. That's the bottom line. I even had a friend, a guy who was in the business for a long time, who consults, and he was going to talk to Bruce Floor. He has contact. He's a friend of Bruce's, who's the president of Railtex, to find out why. What the story was back then, why they didn't do that. Because Brooks Benz is his name. Brooks wrote the article on the AGR and RMC, and he's doing an article on this railroad in RMC as well. So, and Brooks was here for an op session a few weeks ago, but he's a railroad professional. And so we were going to actually dig into what the story was. Why didn't Railtex own freight cars? But anyway, we've decided that there will be a fleet of cars that provides car supply for the paper mills for shipping the paper. So, and some of those will be painted and have that shield, that logo. So there's a little bit of brand reinforcement, if you will. So the locomotive fleet is largely black and gold, but there's a lot of these outliers in there. You've got CNW C628s. There's going to be there's a couple of, my friend Neil Schofield did a CVR S11 that's stenciled AWM. I did a couple of units. There'll be some more interesting engines coming. I'm going to acquire a few of the Lake Superior and Ishpeming. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
That's right.
Gators, the RST-15s, which were sidelined in late 1989. So those are available. So I'm going to be getting a few of those to join the Gators that I have, that the AGR had. So, these things will be running in predecessor paint schemes, but they'll be combined with, the black and gold to create. You can't have everything painted. It's got to be there's got to be a bit of transition going on there. So
would those have been, let's see here. I started on the GBW in '92. Those things were sitting by the paint shop in.
Oh, you were on the GBW? I didn't
know.
know that.
Yeah. I started.
Oh.
I was a brakeman brakeman and a yard foreman on the Green Bay and Western, and started in September of '92 all the way to the end of the railroad. So,
Wow.
I saw those alligators all the time. So
Yeah.
in '92, they would have had GBW and not LS&I on the side.
Right.
And there might have even been one or two that said FRVR on or
I was
FRV.
going to say the Fox River Valley units,
That's
right?
There was only two of them, I think, that went over there because they didn't like them. They didn't like them. They didn't MU with other engines very well. There was something with the pin. Not to steal what's going on, but inside the MU receptacle, there's a series of pins, like 27 pins, and if they don't jive between the two, you have different systems talking, and they didn't like that very much.
Right.
So yeah, they weren't very compatible with, and they were heavy as hell. I guess they were lined with concrete. So
let me ask you, Mike, do you know, can you confirm, because there's, I posted on the group about this, and I didn't realize you worked for the GBW. There seems to be some indication that they actually ran them for a very short period of time, whether it was a day, a week, I don't know, and determined that they were not pleased with the performance, and that was the end of that. Is that true, or is that baloney?
That's baloney.
Okay.
They never ran 1 mile on the Green Bay and Western, from what I've been told, for the simple reason is they were overweight for the weight of the bridges that we had on the railroad.
Yep, got it.
However, they did run on the FRV.
Sure.
So, and then eventually a couple of them ended up being like scavenged for parts.
Yeah, I remember seeing that they were essentially a rolling parts inventory, and they apparently the GBW purchased the inventory of parts from the LS&I.
Yeah,
the Alco parts. So that makes sense. So I'm kind of, when I do these engines, my plan is to paint. They'll be in LSI paint, but modified for the A&WM with lettering. So but I was contemplating keeping a couple in the in the deadline. But in that case, I'm wondering whether they would have come.
Keep the chocolate brown one in the deadline.
Yeah, I like that 2403.
The 2403. Just keep that one in the deadline.
I love that one.
That thing's just a giant turd, is what it looks like.
It really is.
It's not even pretty.
It really is ugly as hell.
I'll tell you what, I've got somebody, a guy that I know very, very well. His name is Dan Ludke. If you need to know something about the Green Bay and Western, he's the guy to ask. I will ask him tomorrow. I will send him a message, and I will ask him directly about whether they ran on the layout on the railroad.
It really was
the railroad
layout.
or not, and reasons why it didn't. And I'm fairly certain, I'm pretty close to right about I know it was about the bridges.
So it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
In the weight.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't really affect what I do, I don't think, unless I were to assume that they were acquired from the GBW. See, that's the thing. I could go one or two ways, because they picked, I believe it was November of '89 that transaction was done, that the GBW picked them up. So they could come via GBW to A&WM, or they could have come directly from LSI. It doesn't matter too much, but if I do a couple in the deadline, they would have GBW lettering on them. So I don't know. I got to think about it a little bit. But right now I'm in, I'm kind of just toying with how many to get, how to do it. It's a fine line, because I don't want to create a rolling junkyard again. But at the same time, you have to have some different color here. And there's another wrinkle to this that I'll talk about when we Well, I can talk about it now. So if we're talking about locomotives, being in '91, so you figure there's about 4 years under the rails, under the wheels on this thing. Inevitably, the Alcos are wearing out. I mean, the GBWs lasted until the end of '93, and then they were beaten by then. The LSIs lasted until '89. If you go around and look at the general pool, I'm talking about Alcos, not Canadian variants, which were newer. But this railroad, in Rail Texas' case, would have had to have been considering replacements or augmenting. So what I'm doing is in '91, CSX, and a lot of railroads for that matter, but CSX had a pool of U30Cs, GE U30Cs. So I've got 4 CSX U30Cs that I'm going to be painting them into predecessor paints and heavily weathered family lines, L&N, and I'll figure on the other 2. Not quite sure exactly what I'm going to do. But essentially, these will be coming in early '91 and augmenting in order to help with the coal traffic. They're not going to be replacing. They may sideline an Alco or 2, but I like working at that sort of in that transition thing instead of everything being so safe and sound for these Alcos. You got to create a little backstory, a little drama. These things they're ready for, the torch. They're beat. They're beat. So, and like the LS&I, they got U30Cs, and then the U30Cs were replaced by C30-7s. And you can go around to the railroads, any railroad all over the country, and you see the same pattern where Alco locomotives were being pushed aside. Maybe they had a second life and then they were pushed aside, that kind of thing. So we'll have a few GEs coming in as well. So,
but an Alco to GE transition is very prototypical.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of components were shared components between the 2 manufacturers, until GE decided to really get serious about what they're doing. And essentially, now the new GEs are just, I actually just call them giant Alcos, because you listen to them on the main line, they just sound like sound like an old Alco out there, and they are just brutes.
Yeah,
and
the 4-cycle engine, has that sound.
Yeah, it's just, but that's a real natural transition for, and that's one of the things that sometimes I think freelancers tend to, forget with their backstories or with their continuing stories, which is really kind of interesting, because there's so much that everybody wants the next shiniest thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I've fallen into that pitfall too. I'll fall into it and then kind of self-correct, and it's hard to because there's so many things out there available, and they keep coming. Rapido announces this, Bowser announces that. It's like every other day something killer is coming out.
I know.
Not again. So everybody wants a little bit of everything, but at some point you have to kind of put your foot down and say, okay, this is where I'm at. I got it. I'm a pinball. I've always described when it comes to all this, I'm a pinball. When you hit a pin in a pinball machine, the pinball flies around, and eventually it lands somewhere. That's me. I tend to thrash around a lot, and my friends break my chops for it all the time. But
you're going to say something else there, and that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to, but I said no, politically correct. But my wife and I have had a lot of discussions about this too, and because she's a sounding board for all this, because she's a great counselor on this, and she's like, "But you always land in the right place," and she's right. I always do land in the right place. So, and I think this place is a great place to be. It's taken me a full year to fine tune the way I want it to look, the way I want it to feel, what the backstory is. And I think it's a good spot to be in right here. And that's, it's not an easy thing to do when you freelance, but it's almost, that's the good thing about prototype modeling is you have these guardrails that, if you're serious about prototype modeling, you have guardrails. It's like you can't just throw this engine on or that engine on, or you kind of have to, if you're doing it seriously, have certain things in place that keep you grounded. With freelancing, even when it's prototype based, you have almost a little bit too much freedom. and it's tempting to have one of everything on there, and it starts to look a little silly after a while. So I've talked for. I'm going to let you guys ask some more questions. I tend to blow me.
Well, no, this is great because you're answering a lot of the questions that I that I have. I agree wholeheartedly that the backstory to a freelance railroad, and even a backstory not just to the railroad itself, but to the equipment that's on it is very important. And Mike and I, we both have freelance model railroads, and we will have discussions for hours on end about, okay, well, so Rapido just announced the CF7, and how can I, bend my story to get these new Rapido locomotives on my layout? And it's just, it's a, and then make it plausible. And, we have those discussions, and then, we have to essentially make a concession here or there and say, well, actually, I can't have this. And it's, and then I just buy it anyway, and then it just sits in the shelf, and I can just run it when no one's around.
That's right. That's right. But,
so I do have some questions. So just about these big Alcos on the Androscoggin and Western Maine.
Here we go.
Well, okay, so the C628, it's my favorite. It's my favorite locomotive.
Okay, cool.
And I love the Chicago Northwestern and the ore lines up north and in Upper Michigan and all that good stuff. But that's so I'm curious, and maybe I just kind of blacked out when we were talking here. And what are you gonna be using them for in service? Just general manifest trains? Are they going to be running coal drags? What are you going to employ them on?
Yeah, so I think they won't necessarily be assigned to the coal drags. The coal, first of all, the coal that we will run is to a power plant. So it's not, the frequency is not, it's weekly, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, and then maybe 3 weeks with nothing. So, but for the purposes of an op session, most op sessions will probably, once I get the hopper fleet all settled, we'll run them. I think they could be on that. They could be in general service as well, because they're just like a C630, and they'll, these, because of the mountain grades, there's a Holman Summit, a Holman Mountain, it's 2%. It's, running a paper train up there is tonnage is tonnage. So I'm looking at that one. I'm not necessarily saying that those or the RST-15s, the Gators, will be on in any specific service. I think they'll mingle in there. You might even see the C628 shoving a coal train, because we'll run helpers. So you might see a single or a pair of those. Yeah, that will certainly be helpers on that. You might even see, crazier stuff has happened, but you might see one of them or one of the Gators as a yard switcher. Now that sounds nuts, but on the Cape Breton in central Nova Scotia, they had the C630Ms, and they also had RS-18s. But I remember up there on our first trip up there in the middle of the winter, the local job, which was switching the yard, had a C630M. It was drilling the yard with a 6-axle Alco. So Railtex did it. They said, well, that's the power we have, and we're going to use it. So that's not going to be the typical assignment, of course, but I think they'll be mixed in with the other stuff in general. And, once in a while we'll see a unit or two in the deadline where they're just out of service for,
Yeah.
See, I get the chance I can span a few months. It's like February, March, and April mostly. But it's, 60 to 70 days of modeling, if you would. So a lot can happen in that time frame.
Yeah. And then just to dive into the model a little bit, because I have a whole host of these locomotives. So I've I appreciate what you're talking about with the sound.
Yep.
And I've outfit mine with ESU, and then I doubled up on the scale sound speakers in it.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And the bass that those things output is just amazing.
Absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah. JT Burke is a wizard. He is of Scale Sound. He's a guitar player like I am, and he's an audio. Yeah. He I don't know exactly what, I can't recall exactly what he does, but he is like an audio engineer. Okay, working with bands and stuff, and he's a sound guy. That's what he does. So that's why his speakers are so good, because he understands amplifiers and speakers and sound and frequencies and things. He can hone in on the frequencies and understand which frequencies the ear perceives and needs to hear. And I'm sorry, but if you're not using his speakers, you're not railroading. It's as simple as that. His speakers, I may offend some people out there.
No.
I apologize, but if you're not using Scale Sound System speakers, you're not experiencing the full tonal range of that prime mover of the recording. Because if you play the ESU recording through your headphones or through a good set of speakers, you're like, oh my God, it's incredible. You can't get that kind of bass response or mid-range response even out of a small speaker, but he has found a way to get it really very close and very, very, like with an Alco. You've got to have, in the C628s, for instance, the speakers, they're big. And it's not just the size, it's the way he constructs the baffle and the whole driver, the whole thing. And it's got to bring out some of those mid-range frequencies and bass frequencies. Some of it to get, the experience, to really feel like you're hearing the thing. It's never going to be like being trackside, but you can get close. You can get close. So yeah, the guy, as much as ESU or the stuff Matt Herman did with the actual recording, JT Burke with Scale Sound Systems, plug them again and again, because it's just night and day. Yeah. And if you're an EMD guy, if you like Jeeps, 645s or 567s through that, his sound, oh my God, they're incredible. Just nuts. Just great.
And just the little like ancillary sounds that ESU does, that you get to choose which ones you put on, that you can really make your engine unique, right? So it's not just the normal 567 and the spitters come on every 3 to 5 seconds. You can alter that and just really really dial it into the way that you want it to be. And I just, at any rate, I have a true appreciation for those locomotives. I was just curious how they were going to be put into service on your layout, and then just
and make sure, and another thing about that, so to dial in a little bit on the C628, so and this is where you can get granular with it, but that particular recording that's in those engines is I think it's 251B, I think 16251B. So if you look at the lineage of the 251, the recording that's in there is actually from a C425. But that lineage, so that's the right file for that locomotive. You don't want to put the big Alco recording in there, because the C620s didn't sound like C630M or M6 or C636, the 251E recording that Loc Sound has.
Yeah.
Much different. Sounds like a steam engine. Chuff, 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 chuff. This thing's a lot different. So if you look at the way for instance, the recording that I used for the RS-D15s is from a RS-27. So because if you look at the lineage, the way when they were built and which version of the 251 16-cylinder was in the RS-27, the RS-D15, the C424, then the C425, C628. There's a flow there. So they're different versions. So the C628 sound, they have the same sort of characteristics as the C630s that I have, but they're different recording. And it's the right recording as far as I'm concerned, as far as my research tells me. So that's something to consider. And I've listened to the videos and kind of analyzed them. And that's where it needs to be.
So
anyway, go ahead.
in a consist then, so let's say you have the C628 matched up with a 30 and, and an RSD 15. Are you running all of them sound?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's killer. Right now downstairs, in that photo you saw, the other picture up in Carthage, so there's two 28s and an RSD 15. You could throw a C630 in that consist, I mean, that blow your mind. It's unbelievable, the sound. It just absolutely blow your mind. And the thing is, you have to dial in. Each one of those recordings is recorded and processed differently. So the RSD 15, which is an RS27 recording, it's a 16251, but it's the right one for the RSD 15. For whatever reason, it's a very quiet recording. So that prime mover volume needs to be up around 70%, which is twice the volume of what the C628 or 630 need to be at, for them to be in unison, for you to be able to hear all three prime movers distinctively in the consist. And without scale sound speakers, it's all mud. It's all frying bacon. It's bacon frying. That's all it is. You don't know. But if this is the kind of thing I do ad nauseum, is make these minute adjustments. Okay, RSD 15's got to be at 65% of max, the 628 at 40, and the 630 at 35. And then you run them in consist, you test them, and can I hear the RSD 15? Yep. Can I hear the 28? Yep. Can I hear the 30? Yeah, I can hear all three of them. Then you back away and walk, 20 feet away and listen to them around the bend, and you can still hear all three of them. And they're blending together, and it sounds absolutely raucous. It's killer.
Oh, man.
So there's a lot of science and a lot of trial and error that goes into this. A lot. I would venture to guess I've spent more than anybody in the country on this kind of crap about, this. Like, I have my programmer set up in the den by the computer, the load programmer, and the railroad's downstairs. So when I'm doing this craziness, I'm up and down the stairs. I'm at 30 times a day. If I'm doing on a weekend, if I'm doing, adjustments to the sound, up the stairs, down the stairs, make an adjustment, up, down, up, down. That's how I get my aerobic exercise.
I was going to say, that's how you stay fit.
Yeah, that and the treadmill and all. But, it's, nobody does this stuff. Nobody's done this kind of stuff. I know that no one has, because some of the stuff I've done is crazy, because it's very time consuming, but for me, it's so important. Just recently I got these U30Cs, and I'm like, there's something about this. There's a recording. ESU has a recording of a U30C. It's a good recording, but it's not great. It only sounds really sweet in notch 6, 5, 6, and 7, or 6, 7, and 8. Below that, it's a little washy. It's not quite defined. So when you trio them, put three of them together, there's something not quite right there. So I took one of the units and put the recording from their ESU's recording of a C30-7. Put that in there. It's a FDL 16. It's just the next iteration of it. Slightly different exhaust, but some of the U-boats have modified exhausts, so it doesn't really matter. Now you mix the C30-7 with the U30C, all of a sudden it's magic. Because you've got this bark of the U30C, this staccato, and then you've got this rumble from the C30-7 underneath. Holy shit, that sounds amazing. So this is the kind of blending you do, and it makes a huge difference. It really, really does. It makes a huge difference if you're willing to invest the time in it. I'm willing to do that, because I think I'm trying to get it as close as possible to being trackside, I guess.
Yeah, and go ahead, Mike. You're gonna.
No. Go ahead. No, I was taking a deep breath. That's all I was doing.
But I guess
me going. I don't.
No,
stop.
this is what we want.
Yeah. Well, this is perfect.
So then, basically, all of this, I guess, tying it into the backstory, tying in the story is about how the railroad is set up and how it operates and how it integrates in with all of the other, let's say class ones or other regionals in the area.
Mm-hmm.
The backstories on the equipment, the sounds that it makes. So you're essentially because of all of this, I guess, effort that you're putting in. I mean, your story that you're telling here is you wouldn't be able to tell if it was fictional or if it was real. I mean, because of all of those ties and all of the attention to detail, I guess I think that is this is like for me, this is what I strive for. This is really fantastic, Mike.
I appreciate it, Andy, and I appreciate that. It's I guess that I don't necessarily make an effort to achieve that objective necessarily, but I think just by nature of, by
Sure.
virtue of the fact that I'm interested in these things and driven by the backstory, the creativity, the dreaming, so to speak, and the rail fanning, and I kind of have a thing where it can be like a thorn in my side if something's not quite real or it doesn't, like, I do treat it as a real railroad, I guess.
Yeah.
And Jacko Zan, I think more than anybody, Jacko Zanich instilled that in me. He doesn't get enough credit. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore. He passed away in 2020. But he ran that railroad of his, and I don't run mine like he ran his because he ran it like a real railroad with rules and timetable, train order, the whole deal. But he treated it like a real railroad. He did not consider it a model railroad. He wouldn't let anybody photograph the fascia, like broad views of the room. It would only have to be in close, like it was a real train. He was strict about that. If you went to visit his place, like you can't be taking drone views and publishing them. And he wouldn't put up with that. And that sort of stuck with me as like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you're gonna go through all this trouble, and it is a lot of work. Let's face it. This is
right.
It's a lot of work, enormous effort of physical effort, and think mostly up here, thinking about this.
Right.
You might as well create something that's not only semi-plausible, but almost to the point where it's like you can feel it when you look at a picture of it. It's visceral, and you kind of, holy crap, that looks like that could be real. Like
Yeah.
So that brings me to a question that I've got, and this is I personally think that like model railroaders as a whole, whether they're prototyping, freelancing, whatever, I think we all struggle with this to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. Is you brought up the drone shot, right?
Yep.
And historically over the basic history of our hobby,
yep,
everything has been, you're always looking down on you're always looking down on it.
Right.
So have you, like for my layout, I've adjusted that so that it's like you're actually operating right about chin height.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So that way there's a lot, my railroad's only 18 inches deep. So it's right here. So I wanted that. I want that line of sight. Like when you were building the railroad, what did you come up with? Mm-hmm. Did you think of that for, or like down the line for like photogenic quality while you were building it, like for the height of the railroad? Or was it just you built the railroad using like traditional methods and then the photographing just came later?
Yeah, I think the height, I'm average height. I'm like 5'11", 5'10", and 3.5 or something. And so for me, I wanted something that was, because of the grades and whatnot, I wasn't going to have there was going to be grades. So that, there'd be transition from level to level in terms of, reaching top of grade. It would be this height, and you'd have to, I don't like things that are too low. Like, to me, that just, I don't want to be looking down on it. Chest height's fine. Shoulder height's fine. Anything lower than that is like Madrid, for instance, is a little bit low for me. I prefer it be a little bit higher, but that's, has to be there in order to get to New Sharon, which is up at like shoulder height. And, so I'm not exactly, I can't really answer to the design back then. I must have determined, I want a minimum height of this, and I don't want to exceed this height. So like when my wife goes downstairs, she has to stand on. She's 5 feet. She has to get on a stool to see stuff.
Yeah.
But when I get down to her height, I'm like, holy crap, you got a good view. You're like a person standing trackside. So what she sees when she just walks around is like right there. So I think it was a combination of probably trial and error, and but I do agree with you that anything for me personally, anything below chest is too low. It's just too low. It's like if you feel like a bird looking down on it. And some people have that. There's no problem with it. I don't say, oh, that stinks. It's just that I'd prefer it to be a little higher. And
Right.
there's a couple like the Martin Spur, which is on the old Oxford County, the AWM now, the branch. That's the highest, and that's that's like 79. I want to say 79 inches high. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I think
Oh yeah.
so.
We've got a friend of ours.
79, or is it 57? Maybe it's 57. 60 inches. I don't know. Anyway, that's the highest spot, and that is a little bit high for me. Like I walk past there, I'm like, I wish this was about 2 or 3 inches lower. Although the view's nice, it's a little bit, I'd like it to be a little bit lower. So it's a compromise. Like White Mountain Junction, this here is fairly low. This is probably stomach level for me, like mid, like here. But everything I photograph, I try not to, as far as getting to photography, I try to shoot from where a rail fan would be. Let's say that.
Oh.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I always think, okay, if there was someone trackside here, where would they be? And I don't just put the tripod there and shoot. Well, where would he be? I don't know. He's in midair, adrift. He's a bird. No, I don't do that. There's got to be like a hillside there, or some sort of imagined hillside that's off the in the aisle, maybe if the terrain is going up. I try to keep those things in mind when I'm shooting. And a lot of them are at this level, like here at White Mountain Junction, which is the interchange, the former interchange where the Oxford County would come in. It's just the camera is basically just on the ground here.
Yeah.
Or on a tripod at ground level. And that kind of thing, it just looks like you're standing at trackside. Or maybe you're standing on, like as a rail fan back before drones, elevate, they used to be a saying, elevation is everything. There was always an effort, always to climb something. I used to find get up a knoll, climb a hillside. Like I'd get up on that hillside there, shoot down. You always wanted to get above the train because a lot of the trees that are in the way would not be in the way. It would just be more dramatic to be above the train. It's funny with rail fan, you want to be above the train because there's drama there. It's cool. You can see more.
Right.
But when you're shooting the model railroad, you almost want to be
at level.
Yeah, you want to be back down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really the philosophy, and get a good get a camera. If I were to advise anybody who's serious about photography of the model railroad, there's a camera. The camera I use is called a Fujifilm, not Fujichrome, Fujifilm, one word, X100S, and there are several iterations of it. I got that years ago. It was not cheap. It was $1,000, but it's paid dividends. All the photography I do is with that Fujifilm X100S digital. It's a fixed focal length lens, so there's no tele. It looks like you're shooting with a 50mm lens. It's fat. The lens is incredibly sharp. It looks like an old-fashioned SLR camera. It's terrific. And my friend Neil Schofield turned me on, and Ken Karlowitz turned me on to photo stacking a while back, and I kind of poo-pooed it for a while and said, yeah, I'll get around to that sometime. And then I tried it, and I said, holy crap, what am I missing? And, now I photo stack everything, and it's so easy. It's so easy to do. So this is a photo stacked image. If you were to zoom in on that, everything's in razor sharp focus all the way to the back. Everything.
Yeah.
Like all this grass in the foreground, that would all be blurry if I didn't focus stack that.
So do you use like Helicon Focus or Photoshop?
Yep, Helicon or Helicon Focus, and just I take usually 9 images for one. So I'll go
Yep.
I'll start on the left. I'll, set the focus point there, and then middle. So usually 9 to 12 points.
Yeah.
And then, bring them into Helicon, and it does its thing in half a second.
And then you got a beautiful,
yeah,
completely in focus shot.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. Really is. It's a game changer. Really is a game changer.
Sure. So we had some discussion earlier about the Oxford County, and this picture again was taken, I guess, or this picture was inserted into the deck prior to its demise. Its demise, right?
Its demise, yeah.
Yes. But so essentially now the whole Androscoggin and Western Maine is now it's the whole layout now. There's no is there any, I guess, territorial disputes for rail with short lines and anything like that? It's all
nope. It's all AWM. So the interchanges are off layout with the Canadian Pacific at Jackman, with the St. Lawrence and Atlantic at Bethel, former CN, and with Guilford at Kennebec Junction. Those are the interchange points. And the railroad, the AWM, runs all the territory. So the only the only disadvantage to eliminating the short line is the fact that there's no interchange. There's no live interchange on the railroad.
Yep.
There's interaction between. So, for instance, the branch will now interact with a road job. The road job will go up to North Rumford, which is a long run. The switcher will be up there. They'll interchange. They'll interchange. They'll swap cars and go about their business. So it's just the same railroad doing it. The only thing I will keep as a caveat with that, a while back I had the paper mill at East Stixfield. I don't know if you have any pictures in here, Andy, of the paper mill at East Stixfield.
Take a look here.
And if you don't, that's fine. There'll be plenty coming.
That's cool. That one's
this
cool.
one. Yeah, this is
that cool one's one. Just Mike. I'm sorry, but that is just stupid cool right there. That one is just neat.
The smoke's real too, by the way. Oh yeah, right.
I bet
that could actually Andy, that could actually pass for the UP.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just come on. This is.
Let me see if I have anything.
That engine, strangely enough, those two locomotives on there are no longer viable because this was a sort of 94-ish look. That 190, is it the 190? That would have come over from Guilford a little bit later, and that's a C630M behind the GE. That was not available from CN until late '92, spring of '92. So those are no good. So just erase that picture. But the photo's still good. You can keep it. But the power, these two particular locomotives are no longer there. This is how quickly I move. See what happens if you change a couple of years, you have to calculate what happened, what was available if you change a year or two. Now you can make exceptions and say and pretend that those engines were available, blah blah blah. I just, for whatever reason, I have a mental block against that. So, but that is a neat shot, and the lighting there. That's the overhead fluorescence plus the halogen spots on that. And that came out good. That came out nice.
That's really cool.
So I have a question then. So do you do any custom lighting when you're taking your photos?
The only thing I have fluorescence, and that the banks of fluorescence everywhere in the basement. There's like 20 some of them, 20 plus 8-foot fluorescence floor. It's a bright room. There's a lot of lighting there. And I also have banks of halogen lights that I'll use from time to time to change the light in an area to create sunlight, to create shadow. So those are on and off. They create heat. So during the summer I don't use them, but during the winter I'll keep them on during a session. And then I have photo floods. They're called, I forget what they're called, but they're for photography. These big box lights. They have a big circle.
Yeah.
And they
box.
Yeah, they're just huge things that I used when I was doing the videos for Model Railroad Hobbyists. All those videos, I used the lighting for those. those to really, I mean, it just generates an enormous amount of light, and it enables the video camera to do a much better job. It doesn't really, they're not necessary for the still photos, but for video, it really helps quite a bit. But those have to be, they're portable, they have to be hauled around and put in place and stuff like that. So yeah, there's the paper mill.
This is Dixfield, right?
That's East Dixfield.
East Dixfield, yeah.
Yeah, East Dixfield. That's, I don't know if you have any pictures that show the photo backdrop of that mill. It'd be worth talking about a little bit. There's a photo there. Behind that, okay, that's a good one. And this was taken from the last op session by Brooks Bentz, I mentioned earlier. He was running this job. Brooks is like 6'7" or 6'8" or 7'2" or 8'9". He's very, very tall. So when I saw the pics, I'm like, why are they so high? Why is he up? I'm like, well, that's because that's how tall he is. You know, he's way up there. So you can see the photo backdrop. If you scan through a couple of these images, you'll see this was the longest photo backdrop that I've done on the entire railroad. It starts there and it goes 22 feet off to the right. I was trying to think of this.
Is this the paper mill you did that series on in Model Railroad Hobbyist about integrating the photo backdrop into a 3-dimensional model?
Let me see if I can.
No, that's not the same. That's the one on the very end, right?
Yes and no. If you get a picture of the photo backdrop, if Andy can find one, you'll see on the far left end of it, like you said, Mike, is that photo backdrop from that original paper mill. Mm-hmm. That I pulled it. I changed that original mill, which was New Portland, and that is now New Vineyard. It's a completely different. Yeah, here's a good picture. This picture will give us something to kind of talk about. So it doesn't really show the components of the backdrop, but it shows the layout of the paper mill. So that photo backdrop, the extreme left, on the left side is the original photo backdrop, and then I built onto that and created about a 22 foot long photo backdrop that goes all the way to there.
Whoa!
Oh my
22 inches high. So it was a monster. Basically took components, various photos that I had taken over the years. Plus, I bought some high-res photos off the internet of paper mill components, imagery, and basically cobbled together a montage that stretches all the way. And last summer, Mike Rose came up and we put the photo backdrop up using some special wallpaper paste that Chris Adams recommended.
That's right.
It was 83 degrees in the basement. It was middle of the summer.
Ooh.
Brutal.
Yikes.
And we're up there. This is before all this stuff was here. It was just wood, just a cork. We were up on this thing, and it just was a nightmare because I spent a lot of money on it, and I'm like, this better go well. If this doesn't go well, I mean, this is like we literally talked about how we're going to put this thing up for like a year. It sat rolled up in a tube for a year. So anyway, we get the thing up. This wallpaper paste worked great. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this thing looks like crap. Because what was happening was because it was so high, most of the photo backdrops I have don't have any sky in them. They're cut off at the horizon. This has all of the sky. If you get to another, maybe a broad view, you'll see some of the atmosphere. You see that right down in the middle to the left? All that. Can you zoom in on that?
I sure can.
Yeah, zoom in on and go and then bring it up. Now zoom in again.
As far as I can get.
Yeah, okay. See all that atmosphere on the backdrop? All the wood chip piles. All that stuff. This is the first photo backdrop that I had that actually had sky in it and this photo doesn't really do it justice, but the sky was everything because it had all the steam boiling out of the mill. The photos I took were of a live mill. So I had to keep.
So that's not cut at all to formate, and that's not cut. That's actually the full photo.
Full photo, yeah. All that gray sky and everything, the clouds, the stuff billowing out is all part of the photo. This brick building is foreground building. That's the real building. But behind that, so the integrated mill, the big modern mill, is on the photo backdrop behind this old brick structure. So this brick structure would have been the original mill, and they built onto it over the decades. So getting to my point of what the problem was, why it looked like crap, was because it's so high and because the sky included in it, there was a tremendous amount of glare on.
Yes.
I mean, hideous glare. And we all looked at it, and I'm like, this will not stand. This isn't going to work. This just looks terrible. So Mike Rose is like, I think Krylon makes a flat finish, flat finish. So we ran out to Lowe's, and we got a couple cans of this stuff. And we sprayed a test area, and it worked. It dulled it right down. Completely got rid of the glare, but the fumes were so bad, we had to vacate. We had to get the heck out of there like really fast. So I did it over time, and I still have a few areas I need to spot treat, but it basically killed the glare on the sky portion. I keep pointing, but I didn't want to flatten the imagery on the photo backdrop because there's no glare on the buildings or the steam or the chip pile or any of that stuff. It was just on the sky, on the gray. Because by virtue of what it does, it dulls the color a little bit, So.
Yeah.
So I have a question also, since that backdrop isn't as high as the one behind it.
Mm-hmm.
When you did the one behind it, did you? This is probably the weirdest question I'm going to ask all night long. No, it's not. I tell you right. No, I'll come up. No, it's not. I'll come up with far weirder than this. But did you sit there and go, okay, I got to go get pictures of this now because the sky looks almost the same as what the other one does. I've got to, in order to transition that to make it look like it's fluid, like the sky. Like if
you're talking about the white strip on top.
Yeah, the sky in the backdrop behind it.
It's a lot lighter. Yeah,
it's a lot lighter. So did you have to get how did you transition that?
Yeah, so it's a couple things. So when you're standing, this was taken on from a ladder. When you're standing down in the pit, down in here, and you're working that mill, you don't really see that wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you only see what's in front of you.
All right.
So there's no real you might see a little strip of it, but not much. So this is high enough so that your line of sight is you're in the mill there, and you're just seeing all that gray storm cloud.
Yeah.
And the photos I got of that show that stormy sky were taken a few weeks before that mill in Groveton, New Hampshire closed. I got up there, and it was in December, and took the pictures, and the sun just happened to pop out, and they had all these steel gray clouds. So it was just luck, And then, that's just the way it works out. But so when you're in the space in there, maybe show a couple of other pictures of it from the last op session that show.
That's
you kind of
cool.
can see some there. You can see all straight ahead. You see the wood chip piles, and you see pulpwood piles. There's a wood yard there. Now you'll see a couple of green engines there. See those green engines? All right. So this is what I was getting to earlier, and this is the one caveat about. You asked the question, Andy, about one railroad. The back then when I was doing the 94 thing, I actually had a in-plant switcher for International Paper. This is International Paper. They had a pair of Alco S6s. In that scheme, I came up with a paint scheme, bright green, similar to the Minnesota, Dakota, and Western, sort of like that.
Yeah.
And but those locomotives were conveyed to the AWM, as we went forward. So right now the AWM switches the mill, but with the move back to 91, I might bring back that International Paper and do I think there's so many interesting examples of paper mill switchers, and that would enable me to potentially have a fleet of EMDs, because I don't have any EMDs on the railroad. So maybe some SW1200s or something like that.
There you go.
Oh, how about maybe something that sounds perfect. Sounds perfect. Farland Terminal Logistics their marketing department will be in contact with the paper mill and to start negotiations on a contract switching operation.
Okay.
Therefore, you can use mill employees to do the switching. Therefore, freeing up extra people from the railroad to go and do what they need to do. And
not sponsored.
I'm just saying.
I think that I have to consider that option again. It's a maybe. I like the idea of a live interchange. Because we don't have a live interchange. This would be the AWM coming in and interchanging with the International Paper Railroad. So it would create that, and also another little bit of color on the railroad you'd have. So plus, again, if I did it, it would be some EMDs. The thought of going the next however many years with no EMD power is sort of like I'm getting hives thinking about that. Because, I like EMDs too.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about. I texted Mike Rose the other day. I said, "What would you recommend for, implant circa 91 implant paper mill?"
What do you think he said?
He said SW1200, SW1200s. He mentioned the proto.
An old Conrail GP8.
Yeah, I don't know. Switchers are cool.
They are.
So I might do something like that, and they'd wear that paint well. Oh, look at that.
I happen to have right in front of me, Mike.
Oh, Rose comes in F units?
Quite literally. Oh, yeah.
No, that's
a great Mike. That's a great idea. Why?
Mike's been staying up too late. He needs to get a little more sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
no Mike.
No Mike.
No Mike.
Yeah, it's just going to be a B unit with a cabin. It's just a remote control B unit is all it is.
I actually have one, but it's been sold. So, but anyway, so that's the only other possible augmentation to the railroad scene. So it's all AWM now, and it's a unified front. So we'll go from there, and hopefully people embrace it. I know there's a core group of people that everybody's been very supportive of it and enthusiastic about it. But there are people that still say, "Hey, bring back the Allagash." It's like, well, I can't. That horse left the barn.
Yeah, right.
What you're gonna find now is somebody, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, but somebody's gonna create the Allagash Historical Society.
I mean, I appreciate all the sort of enthusiasm behind it, but I feel uncomfortable sometimes being, I mean, the only railroad to me that really is legendary is Alan McClellan's. The V&O. That's
the V&O.
I read the V&O book 100 times. When I was coming up with the Allagash concept. I think the Allagash thing was a good concept, and I think it was convincing and fun. It was really cool, and and I often think, not often, but occasionally I think, could I have done this throwing the grenade done in a different way? Could I have preserved the AGR and just re-rostered it with different locomotives? But I thought to myself, no, I can't, because it's already been through Guilford. So you got to ask the question, well, how would it have been dealt with? And you have to come up with something that's plausible. The Allagash name's got to go away.
Yeah,
it just has to go away because, for instance, when Railtex took over the Central Vermont, they didn't keep it. They could have kept the name Central Vermont, right? They got rid of it and started anew with New England Central. And most times, in most cases, not all, there's a new company, a new brand, a new name to erase the old and to move on. So I had to, kind of say goodbye to it from that perspective. And, I'm not sad about it. There's times where, there's always a little bit of second guessing, like, did I do the right thing? But when I go downstairs, that's why I'll be perfectly, I wear my feelings on my sleeve. To take a line from the movie Shrek, but donkeys don't have sleeves. But anyway, we love Shrek. Shrek is like anyway. So it's been a tough year in terms of dealing with this whole thing because I'm a sort of high-strung, a little bit anxious person. I have that nervous energy going on, and it's hard to keep up with me sometimes. I tend to vacillate and change and all this stuff, and I'm very fussy and very particular. So it's not, this wasn't done, although the decision was made quickly, it hasn't been without its growing pains because you're, saying goodbye to something that you've dealt with for 16 years that developed a following, and you're terminating it. And you have to come up with something that's, in my book, equally cool, if not better. I'm not looking to get something that's just okay. I want this thing to be better, more interesting, more gritty and dirty and nasty and railroady than the first one was. That's it. That's my objective at the end of the day. So the bar.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that big time. I've gotten known to be an S scale modeler by choice. I got out of HO and went over to S, and I created my own railroad, the Farland Terminal.
Okay.
And after a while, it just wasn't progressing the way I wanted to. I came up with these other ideas, and I transitioned back. My main layout is transitioned back over to the an HO one. I'm rebranding it as a contract switching operation. But yet I'm still having my S scale one as a modular type of thing. So I can do both of them.
Absolutely.
And so, oh my God, the backlash I got about going to HO and why did you, I'm like, guys, I needed something different. I needed something that I could actually see progress with, because I wasn't progressing the way because I was handling track and everything else like that. And I'm like, and so now
they're actually they were giving you grief for it. Someone was
I get all sorts of grief because I was abandoning S. No, I'm not abandoning S. I'm it's still there. I'm just focusing on this right now. It'll come back. But it's now everybody's kind of like, oh, hey, that's cool what you're doing.
Yeah, right.
And now everything's kind of settled and calmed. And now my S scale stuff. I told Andy the other day, the construction part of my HO layout is done. I'm just scenery and story and operations now. But so now I can circle back and get going on the S again. And I've got some really cool ideas for that. And I think it'll tie everything, like we talked before, it ties everything together. Once you see the two in place together to a degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So, I think that's great. You have to, at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. You have to do what scratches your itch. And depending on how many itches you have, I have a lot. So, I get really itchy sometimes. And it's like, damn, psoriasis is bad. So, you have to, all my friends are, the same way. It's hard, very hard to do the same thing for a long period of time. And that's why, in my case particularly, doing this change was not without some risk. It was, there's some risk here because, and I know it sounds silly, it's just a hobby. What risk? Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there's risk because it's a big part of my life, and this is, we all take the hobby seriously. We put a lot of time and effort into it. It's not just a casual thing. It's, it's important, right? So when you blow something up, there's always the possibility that the new endeavor might fail. Not in the eyes of other people, but in your own eyes, right? So and that was my concern. That's why.
Are you doing the right thing? Is this going to be the right way to go? Am I going in the right direction?
That's right. And
I know, Andy, you've done that too, right?
Yeah, I've definitely questioned myself multiple times on, what we're doing here. But that's part
of the learning. It's part of the process of going through. What's really, scarier is is if you build something and you are that you're no longer happy with the physical, not just the conceptual, but the physical, and you either need to make a change for whatever reason, or you have something that you just can't accomplish with the railroad you have, and you actually physically have to take it down. And that's, there's plenty of examples of that. And like McClelland, he had to move, so he took down the V&O. Dick Elwell, getting back to him, he built a new house for the railroad, had to take down the other one and move parts of it, so, and Tony Custer, whatever Tony did at his, after 30 years or 25 years of the AM, tore it down to start something new and, something he felt the need to do. I hope I don't get that desire someday. Like I said earlier in the conversation, I don't feel I'll ever have that problem. Because I'm happy with what I see. So I'm able to rebrand it. Now, in 10 years or whatever, if I get tired of these black and gold Alcos running around, what the heck am I going to do then? I'm kind of out of options. I can't rebrand it again. I can go back in time and recreate the AGR, but I just don't see doing that.
What about progressing forward? Have you ever thought about that beyond 1990? See, for me, I don't want ditch lights. That's my cutoff.
You don't want ditch lights.
I don't want ditch lights. That for me, because I like rotary beacons and I like strobes and I like that kind of stuff. And I am not a fan of ditch lights because they took away all the cool little lighting things that railroads did.
Yeah,
because they had the triangle of death became the norm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody out there knows that, but that's actually what the FRA called it at one point, was called the triangle of death.
Yeah.
Ditch lights and then
the ditch lights and the headlight. Yeah. So, I mean,
I agree. That's a great point. I remember, I'll answer the question about going forward, but getting to ditch lights. So back in, I don't know how many people really realize this, but in our area in New England here, I'm originally from Long Island. So my first foray into New England railroading, when I really got bitten by the bug, was an article in Trains Magazine in 82 by Ben Bachman, a two-part article called The River Line. And that was about the Connecticut River Line up through Vermont, mainly Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. And it discussed, this is pre-Guilford, so you had the Canadian Pacific into Vermont, the Maine Central Mountain Division, CV, the B&M, blah, blah, all that great stuff. And I remember seeing the CP stuff, the Canadian Pacific, the C424s had, and I don't know if it was that article specifically, but it became apparent to me that they looked different. The lighting was different. They had these ditch lights. They called them ditch lights. But nothing else in New England had this, right? All set? Oh, is this dying? I don't know. Oh, it's got 36% left. We still got plenty of power. My wife just came up with the power plug in case we run out of power. Man. But anyway, so they had these ditch lights, and they were the only railroad that had them. They'd come into New England, into Vermont, down into Massachusetts, and nobody else had them. And so back then it was a cool, like, oh, wow, that's neat. But once it became mainstream, it did take away from something. So as far as going forward, I don't think I'd want to progress beyond, say I like 1991 seems like a real sweet spot. It really does. Yeah. I certainly I wouldn't ever be able to do graffiti, so for me, like rail fanning it seemed that 1998, it seems like the turn of once the millennium, that's when it really exploded, but right up through the mid 90s, 95, 96, there's no graffiti. There's nothing. Yeah. You just don't see it. You don't see it. And, but I don't see where I'd benefit from going forward. Right now, you've got in the early 90s, you've got a good blend of the newer freight cars with the older stuff. It's a neat spot to be in for a lot of reasons. So I don't really see the opportunity to go forward from here to any great extent. And I don't really have an interest in going, back, because most of the things I love, I'm able to model in this area. I will say, with the exception, I love F units. And I tried to do some F units, these black F units on the AWM. We ran them at this last session. And, I can do them, I can keep them, but they just didn't quite fit in that time period in this 91 thing. So that's the one thing I will say that I really can't have. Although there were examples of railroads running them in the 90s, it's not a common thing.
You could always have an excursion train.
Yeah, that just turns me right off. I just can't do that. I mean, I could, or I could make them, executive F units or something like that. But I don't know.
I ran on a really cool Burlington Northern layout. Alan Schrader here in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Okay.
And he did the Marias Pass.
Oh yeah.
And he had a pair of F units that he used for helper service.
Okay. Oh, helpers. Oh, interesting.
So I was the helper job all day. And that was the coolest job. And I got to run that pair of F units back and forth, coming out of the helper pocket, pushing trains up the grade. And
what year was he modeling?
That I don't know. I'd have to double check on that. I think he's, oh man, I want to say it's
like 79, 79 or 80, like 79 to 81 or something like that.
That makes sense. Makes sense. They still had Fs and RS11s and Alcos and things around that time. So no, that would make sense. I couldn't do that in my time era. I just couldn't. You smell a rat.
Yeah, right.
It is what it is. I mean, if I had, someday if we were to build on, my wife and I talked. This is fantasy. It's never going to happen, but build on a small building with a roof deck that you could access from the master bedroom, because the master bedroom is on the lower floor. So that would give me an additional, say, 25 feet, 25 square or something like that, in addition to what we have here. But chances of that are about -5%. So it's not going to happen. But if I did something like that, I guess what I'm saying is, you could have a connecting short line or something. And that,
there you go.
That could happen. But that's very unlikely. So, there's always going to be some compromises. And I think for me, I have to visually see. I'll often do something. I'll run it for a session or two, and then it's gone. What happened to that? Well, it just, I had to see it in action. I can't just conceptualize it. I have to physically see it running and photograph it and document it and just watch it to say, yeah, that's good, or no.
Mike, that was 1990. The Marias Pass is a 1990 layout.
And he's running F units as pushers.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was a little bit of a stretch, or is he doing that because he liked it, or was that happening? I'd love to know. That. That's very because was Burlington? When did BN merge with? When did BN?
What that says.
Santa Fe.
Yeah. When was that?
That would have been 2000s.
Was it really?
Yeah, I think Burlington Northern hung on for a little while in the 90s, and then they did the vomit bonnet, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yep. I can't imagine Burlington Northern had active F units in 1990, but you never know. You just never know. So,
I mean, they still have SD9s on their roster, way out west.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So 90.
See, this is the kind of thing. Like you say that, you bring up this example, and now my brain is spinning. Now my brain is, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, Mike Rose. I think Mike Rose may have said something. Now look what you've done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, see, he's used to me. He knows this is how I operate, right?
But it gives you something to do, right? I mean, like these are the fun parts of building the railroad.
Sure, they are. Yeah. And honestly, I would, if that was if somebody could show me an example of a railroad that ran F units as pushers for some kind of service, for whatever reason, whatever that backstory was, I would say, well, I'd vet it. I'd at least vet it.
Yeah.
I'd vet it.
Sure. What about the slug set? Look at what Katie did with their F units. They created slugs out of them, and they were god awful ugly because they put that door on the nose. But I mean, but yet they were still something. I mean, It's not like you're running guts in the thing. It's
Right.
just weight and traction motors, and it's
Traction
just
motors,
that's it. So I mean, you could really, oh boy, would that ever be a actually, you know what? That would actually be a pretty cool consist. I mean, a pair of C628s with a F7B slug in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
No.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's a bridge. That's a bridge too far, Mike.
I'm gonna say, Mike. I think you just.
I'm
went
just
and
saying.
you were the guy that we're all having a good time.
It could be a 4-axle slug set. It could be specific to 4 axles.
You had a fee many martinis, and that was it. And then now you're that guy.
I'm walking around with my shirt off.
Yeah, there we go.
He just won't leave. He won't leave the party.
Just won't get the hint. No.
Yeah, no, that's always me.
So there is expansion then on the horizon for you and your layout then, Mike. It's not just, or at least the railroad. And you're always looking to kind of tinker with it. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things. I have some scenes to finish. I'm about 85%, 90% done.
Okay.
So I have to finish the East Dixfield paper mill.
Okay.
That's a work in progress, but it's. Then I have a tunnel scene at the base of Holman Mountain. So the base of the grade, there's a tunnel there. The tunnel's in place, but the scenery to the tunnel is not. But that is going to be a really cool scene when that's done. And then the railroad's done. Those two, that's it. And that's complete scenically. Now, there's a lot of details to add. I'm always going back and reworking things and detailing. There's plenty of that to do. And then I'm working on fleets of freight cars, different pulpwood cars and things, lots of cars to re-stencil for AWM, new freight cars to paint for AWM, locomotives to add and detail and weather. There's a ton of stuff to do. And then you're operating throughout that, the railroad's working for a living, and you're tweaking the operations a little bit. But essentially the sort of the stage has been set for what will be a long-term thing, I think, at this point, without any of this radical change anymore. I don't see it happening. I really don't.
Yeah.
And it's taken all of a year to really, figure it out and tweak it to get to the point where I feel. And just in the last couple of weeks, I had those C628s in a deadline. I tried to sell one of those, the one in the picture, and nobody bought it. I said, the poor thing, it must want to stay here. So I fired it up. And I said, wow, this thing's killer. I said, it's a Zito yellow, which is not pretty, but I have another one doing the regular yellow. So
I'm not the only person that likes that Zito yellow.
That's because you're clinically insane. That's why. That is why. It's like color. It's like you and some guy named Brad in Nebraska and a guy that is in a bunker someplace out in central Montana. The three of you are the only Zito guys in the country.
It's not what I'd call a pretty color. I'd have to, but it's an interesting color. And weather's
not even a color.
I had to actually fade it. I faded it with dull coat mixed with white paint to take that neon down to, because in the picture I was looking at of that particular engine, it was almost white. It was just a very pale yellow. So and it weathered nicely. And I've got another one that Mike Rose is going to do the sound install for, which is the standard yellow with the green cab sides, I think. And that'll look nice. And so the pair of those with the black one, the one I painted, we'll have a trio of those. It's just going to be a lot of beastly, nasty horsepower with a lot of filth and grime and soot and just nastiness. I'm probably the only guy who models a deadline that has fully sound-equipped locomotives in it. It's crazy. It's like sunk cost. All this, there's a couple grand sitting here in the deadline, but the deadline is part of. You got to have a deadline. If you're running Alcos at this stage of the game, they're not all going to be running.
Right.
So,
no, that's very true.
Sitting there being parted out. So that's another thing. It's just part of the sort of atmosphere. But I think in general, it's the stage is set, and now it's just a matter of enjoying it. tweaking it. So
Yeah.
I think that does.
So I asked the section crew here tonight in the chat to do. We're going to do a little lightning round questions here, and just before we let you off the hook. So I have. I'm going to start off with the lightning round questions, and that my first question is you have so many really cool scenes on your layout, and which one's your favorite?
I would say White Mountain Junction is my favorite spot. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I enjoy all the locations for various reasons, but that particular one is really cozy. It's a neat junction in there. It sort of speaks to the past a little bit as to what may have been at one time. And there's still an interchange there with the little Roxbury branch. So there's an engine station there. There's a wood yard. You might have a picture in there that you could post. It's just there's something about it. It's based loosely on Whitefield, New Hampshire, which is a cool B&M Main Central junction back in the day. Very loosely based on that or any number of those North Country junctions in New Hampshire and Vermont. So that's my favorite spot. Yeah.
Okay, we got one here from Space Ginger 95. He's asking, so why Elkos?
Why not?
Yeah,
I would say,
right?
Yeah, that's a great point. The bottom line is, anybody who's I wrote a book on Alco's Northeast, it's called. It was published in 2006. Me and Joe Posick wrote it, and it documented the Alco locomotive in the Northeast United States. It was a big book. I grew up with them on the Long Island Railroad. They looked just like Scott Hartley's book, New England Alcos in Twilight from the early 80s. He summarized it best. They look different, they smell different, they sound different. The bottom line, they're always the underdog. They're rough and tumble. They smell, they smoke, they're difficult to work on. But there's something about them that has like sort of a never say die attitude, and they've always been the underdog. The Alco story is one of them being an underdog during the post-war period and during the World War II, being the where EMD was the primary purveyor of road locomotives. Alco was in a secondary position. So everybody knows that story. It's a story of an underdog that it's ridiculous to think that they went out of business in 1969 and there's that prime mover, the 251, is still out there. You go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and they're running fleets of these things that are still running today. It's crazy. I love EMDs and GEs too, equally. They sound amazing, but Alcos have a certain something about them. Yeah.
All right, that was a good question. Stephen N asks, how much focus do you put into detailing freight cars and locomotives? Rivet counter? Question.
No, I'm not a rivet counter at all. I'm not, and I'm not saying that rivet counters are bad. That's a bad thing, because I know people that are rivet counters, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it can hinder your progress. Yeah. For me, I'll put an AccuRail boxcar next to a tangent and run them together, and I don't care, because if you put a good weathering job on them, from an average viewing distance, nobody can tell the difference.
I agree with you.
And I photograph everything I take. I don't take pictures super close in, like I'm using a pair of binoculars or a telescope. I take a photo that a rail fan would take. And when you're rail fanning, even a detail or a roster shot, you're not going up to the nose and shooting. You know what I'm saying? You're not looking at the rail. You're looking at the locomotive sitting in the terminal. So think about the perspective there, and then the rivet counting those stirrups are too thick. So what? You don't see them from the photo. Put a good weathering job on them, and then your eye is drawn to the big picture, to the package, instead of to the details. So that's my
you can hide thickness with shadow.
That you can,
with
absolutely. I was just gonna say, you can be creative with shadow and so I'll put an AccuRail next to a tangent or an exact rail and run them all together. And to me, it all looks great. Yeah.
I always look at it like this too, is like when it comes to like underbody detail, I find that, I get it if it's predominant or if it's really needs to be there, but all the little piping and wiring and everything, if you're focused on that, you're running your railroad the wrong way because your cars are upside down and derailed. So, you know, you're never going to see the bottom of these cars as a rule. So why model what's on the bottom of the car? I guess that's my take on it. I know I'm going to get a lot of email and hate mail for that, but I just don't. Me personally, now at eye level or close to chin level, yeah, there's some of that could come into play with certain things, but you know, for me, I just don't see the.
I don't either, Mike. Yeah,
I just don't see it.
If I were modeling, I'm not going to get into particulars. I don't want to point fingers, but there's, in my opinion, unless you're modeling a derailment over an embankment, there's no need for any of that stuff.
Right.
Put the focus on a motor that works well and runs well, and a locomotive that stays on the tracks, that looks great from the top, but operates really well. That
yes,
runs great and looks great from where you normally would view it. Don't worry so much whether it's a locomotive or freight cars about the underbody, because it's a minority. It's nice to have, but it doesn't make sense to me.
During your operating session, how many times has somebody come up and to you said, "Well, my car card doesn't say that this has underbody details on it." You know what I mean?
Zero.
Absolutely zero. Yeah. They all say, "Oh, I need this car to go right there," and that's right. That's all that they're looking at. That's so right. the underbody details to me are just. I'm not saying they're. It's extra cost.
Sometimes they actually get in the way and prevent the locomotive or freight car from operating.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Why is Chris Adams asking about car cards since he's operated here 3 times? He knows.
First of all, because it's Chris Adams.
I think he's trying to do our audience a favor.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
So the operation is waybills. I have waybills. And switchless, we use switchless at the paper mill, but we use waybills. They're one-way tickets, so car goes. Each freight car has 2 cards, 2 waybills for it, for each direction, load and empty. And I have a master file with the opposing card. So if a load of paper is being shipped out from the mill, its corresponding empty waybill will be in a master file, and then it'll be swapped out between sessions. And I use switchless at the paper mill, but that's it. So no car cards per se, but just the waybills, and it works really well. And I have no plans in changing that because a tremendous amount of effort went into doing it, and it's.
You don't get super detailed with what you have on the
Brooks
waybills.
Is on the call. Don't be picking on Chris. Hi, Brooks.
You don't get super detailed with it with like the load situation. The load on the waybill. It's just here's a load. This has got paper. It's going here, right?
Yes.
Is that all you do? Is have like
a? Hang on, I'm looking for I might have to plug in soon. But anyway. When I first started with the waybills, I was pretty granular about it. I was using real waybills as an example. So the specific commodities were on there, the specific chemical, and the routing was exact. Like it had all the component roads on the bill. If it was going from, say, a load of paper coming out of Dixfield would go to somewhere in Chicago, it would go AGR to Kennebec Junction to the Main Central to Rigby Yard to the B&M to Mechanicville to the D&H down to Pot Yard, Potomac Yard to blah 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 to blah 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 to or if it went Conrail via Rotterdam Junction would go that way. So I had the routing in there, the whole routing. A lot of those bills are still in the inventory, but as I've gone along over the years, it's a lot of work to do that research. So it simply goes to the gateway. If it's a load of paper coming out of Dixfield, it's going via the Main Central. It goes to Waterville. It goes to Kennebec Junction. If it goes to CP, it's going to Jackman. And that's beyond that. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Mike Rose shared that little tidbit with us on the last show. The gateway.
Okay. The gateway. Yeah. That's a really cool concept.
That's my word. Rose will acknowledge that. That's my word. Gateway.
All right. Well, hey.
Yeah. Gateway's a big thing because, that's what railroads refer to it as. At least in New England they did. The CP gateway, the blah, blah, blah gateway. And it opens to the rail network via the gateway. So it's a good way to think about your, the beyond the basement thing that Alan McClellan talked about via which gateway is it going? No,
Yeah.
it's going into that staging yard. No, it's going to the Conrail gateway, or it's going to the whatever gateway, if your railroad has multiple connections.
All right. We're going to do one more here, and we're going to do Rust Belt model railroad. So what advice would you give to someone trying to create a convincing freelance road? And we'll stop there, but then we'll look at this special case that uses Alcos in coal hauling service in Pennsylvania and New York.
What advice would I give to someone trying to create a convincing freelance road that uses Alcos and coal hauling service in PA and New York? Well, it depends on the year, depends on the era, right? So if I were in Pennsylvania, New York, and I was hauling coal in the, say, early 80s, I would be drafting from the Conrail deadline. I am on record of saying it was your word, by the way, just saying, I know that. You just busted the chop. So if I were doing that in, say, 1979, Conrail was purging Alcos by the hundreds at that time. So I'd be drafting, I'd be getting, or Burlington Northern or Southern Pacific. I'd be looking for a railroad that was purging Alcos at that time and what those models were. That's what I'd be doing. Now, if it was a freelance, a legacy road, that was, you could develop a Pennsylvania, New York short line that hauled coal that has been around since the days of steam and was an Alco customer, like the Lehigh, New England or something. They went with Alco right up and they survived, So really the question depends on the area you're in. But if you're creating something that's in the more, quote, modern era, post the creation of Conrail, you'd have to, look to what railroads had them available. And they were being cast off like bad children by the hundreds at that time.
That's good. That's good advice. So
as far as the type of engine, if he's asking about that, again, it depends on the profile of railroad. Even my railroad, it's questionable with the 6 axles, but eventually it happened. Guilford ran 6 axles all over the place. The Montreal, Maine, and Atlantic up in Maine on the former BAR was running C30-7s. It just took a little bit longer for them to arrive there. I'm running them a little bit early in the game, but someone's got to do it first. So
right,
yeah,
might as well be you.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Why
So,
not?
All right. So just to, I guess to tie it together, I think I'll give you my summary here on tonight's show, Mike. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. And it's been outstanding having a chance to talk to you. I think I learned a ton about story and the importance of it, especially with the freelance railroad. And then, just not only just tying it into a scene or the railroad itself, but the equipment, where that comes from. And then the level of immersion that you try to bring to it as well, with the sound and the sight and those other things. I think there's a lot of key things that a lot of our listeners could certainly take away. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight. And I thought it was a really, really fantastic presentation. And I know it was kind of off the cuff. I think if you're up for it, we got to do a 1970s football podcast for sure.
Yeah.
The next time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or we could talk about the Mikowski years, the Magic Man. We'll bring that back.
Oh,
but I just
Look
wanted
what
to
I have here. Look what I have. I just brought this in because I was going to put it behind the iPad in case I needed to lean it up on something.
Pro Football 1975. Nice. There we go.
Nice.
This is a book my uncle gave me a long, long time ago. And this is where I kind of cut my teeth on. Matter of fact, holy crap, I didn't know Ted Hendricks was with the Packers. Did you guys know that?
No.
You know Ted Hendricks, the guy from the Raiders?
Wow. I didn't know that.
With the Packers then? I had no idea. Is that backwards? Are you reading that backwards or
no? It's right.
It's right.
Yeah, I'm reading it. It's backwards because I'm looking at it. Okay, but there he is, Ted Hendricks, Green Bay.
Wow.
Did not know that. But anyway, I just happened to turn to that page. But yeah, we can do a. My Eagles really sucked back then too.
Yeah, the Packers weren't great either.
Oh,
if you weren't a Steeler or Dallas Cowboy or the Raiders, you weren't much anything back then. But
yeah, really
but anyways,
yeah.
But then just to talk about the essence of what you're really trying to portray, I think you're nailing it with the C628s, gritty, brute force. You know, I think you're killing it, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. It's been fun trying to create the whole thing. And, like I said earlier, to say goodbye to the AGR was, it wasn't something it didn't contemplate it it may have seemed like I just kind of cast it off and threw a bomb at it I respected it. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was my thing. But it was just time to move on to something new. And fortunately, I just keep telling people that are, and there are some that just they really kind of miss it, for whatever reason. I'm like, listen, I didn't tear the railroad down. All the scenes are still there.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, right?
Right.
Yep.
That I can still go downstairs and take a picture and it's all the same, and it's just a different, and that's what happens in real life. You go to the same scene, the same place you like to rail fan at, and now it's this. Well, new sheriff in town kind of thing, right? So that's kind of cool. But thanks, guys, for having me on and letting me tell the story and everything. And we can do it again sometime if you want.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on. There's a little inside joke here, Mike. I always do this awkward thing to Ostertag at the end of the show.
Every time.
I'm like, so Mike,
yeah.
What did you think of the show?
Yeah, and then I'm forced to give my honest
and so
opinion.
now this is how I handle my work meetings too. I'm like, just to make sure he was paying attention to everything that happened throughout the course.
No.
So, Mike, what do you think
about what
we talked about all this tonight?
Well, first of all, Mike, thank you very, very much for coming on. You've been you've been an inspiration for me for years and years and years.
Thank you.
And many other modelers out there as well.
Yeah.
It truly has been an honor to talk to you tonight. And I just want to say thank you very much. As Andy said, I've learned a lot. I'm going to actually sit down and take a look at how my story from my freelance railroad has developed, and because of some of the things that you've been saying. And the one thing that I took away from this, and I hope other people that not just have freelance railroads, but prototype railroads can take away from this is the fact that the story of the railroad doesn't have to end with just what you're doing in that moment right then and there. There's always a type of progression that goes on, and change is good. Change can be very positive. Sometimes we can find ourselves getting in a rut, like you said. You just kind of you almost hit a wall with the AGR, and then it's like, well, now what do I do now? I need to make a change, and that rekindles all that fire and that fuel and that creative juice inside you, and that to me was the biggest takeaway from tonight. Is just change is okay. Change is good.
Yeah.
And and the other thing is it's okay to lean on other people a little bit and ask their opinions on what about a direction you're thinking about going, and saying, do you think this sounds realistic enough, or do you think this sounds, do you think this will work? It's never bad to get somebody else's 2 cents, so to speak. I know Andy does that with me, and I do that with him all the time. Our friend Luke does that. He's kind of, hey, what do you think of this? I'm like, I think you're gonna do whatever the hell you want to do. I mean, that's my opinion, doesn't matter. But I mean, but it's truly been an honor, and thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun too. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you guys. You guys are great guys, and And you know, I'd love to do it again sometime and stay in touch. And
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
if you guys are ever in this area, you know, my door is open. So let's just, you know, put that on the table. And
Okay.
you know, I'd love to have you up this way at some point. I don't know if you guys get out in this
Well, I
region,
have to
but
hand deliver that switch engine for the paper mill.
There you go.
That's gonna have to.
talk more about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that'll probably get us uninvited.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make my best effort to bring the sort of keep things calm for a while.
Yeah.
Because it's good for me personally and for the railroad and for people out there. Just kind of there's not going to be as much gyration, not as much jumping around here. I think you'll find that it's going to settle in, which is good. We're just going to ride it for a while, for a good long while, I think here. And I'll keep, you know, the Facebook group is a good place for content. You guys appreciate you getting on there and looking, and it's you know, it's just a lot of fun. And you know, thanks to everybody out there who's expressed their sort of support for the Allagash and for the new venture, and just sort of, you know, being enthusiastic about it, and you know, sharing feedback. It's been great. It's nice to have people out there that appreciate your work, you know, and because it is a lot of work. And you know, it's nice to have people that, you know, put the stamp on it and say, "Hey, job well done." So, thanks, guys, for having me. It's been a good discussion. I've got a lot more to say. It's just
We'll have to have another. We'll have to get you back on.
I think we should have a round two. I don't know what the section crew thinks.
I don't think about it. I know we need to have a round two.
That's for sure.
I know.
No, whatever you want. If you want it to be on a specific topic, you want to go around to have me photograph different, whatever you want to do. You just name the time and place, and I'll be there. So
We'll do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So just little admin here. I got Mike's Facebook group in the description of the show here this evening. So if you haven't, if you're not a member, go check that out. I also put it in the chat a couple times this evening. And that's really great. And Mike, when we're down at the workbench and we can't find our favorite screwdriver when we're fixing our locomotive, what do we always say here at Second Section?
Just keep modeling.
Good night, everybody.
Good